This guy is insane. Why? Because he not only tamed monsters but also humans. Not only that, his tame skill was like a cheat. Every time he tamed monsters, he became stronger and gained more abilities. Let's skip the lengthy introduction and begin the story. A dome of magic circles surrounded a girl, while the MC was outside, activating his own magic to save her. As he did, he wondered why this was happening. He still couldn't even process the fact that their entire class got summoned to another world, so why was this happening to him? The blonde girl beside him pushed the MC, Haruto, further. Left to no choice, Haruto used his skill Tame on her childhood friend, turning her into a summoned beast. It was just a regular day in their high school, with students talking about the latest mangas. A male student, Haruto Tsutsui, overheard the spoilers they were talking about and was annoyed at Yohei Namba, the top of their class cast, for having zero tact. A short-haired girl called for Yohei's attention, asking about the manga he was reading. It's Megumi, together with her friend Mina. Yohei turned to them and asked when they were finally hanging out with him, to which Megumi replied with an awkward laugh. The basketball club keeps him super busy anyway. That's true. He's a first-year prodigy and a regular after all. Suddenly, Mina handed an envelope to Haruto, asking him to give it to her mom. Yohei watched them in confusion and asked what their relationship was. It was Megumi who answered that they were childhood friends. Mina tried to stop her, but it's already been said. Yohei patted Haruto's back. Looks like even dull guys like him get perks in life. Mina tried to stop him when a male student with glasses grabbed Yohei's shoulder and told him to go back to his seat. Haruto was left with Mina, who glared at him before turning back to leave. His attention was caught when a classmate behind him commented about how awkward they were for childhood friends. It was Karen, smirking. If she had a beautiful childhood friend like Mina, she'd probably be nervous. Haruto glared at her, claiming that she left him hanging. Karen just laughed. Did he really think she could call Yohei out? He gets it, right? They're both bad at this kind of thing, after all. Haruto sighed and half-heartedly agreed. Then, he thought about what Karen said. Was he really awkward with Mina? They used to get along so well before, though. While walking, Mina looked back to see Haruto and Karen talking and pouted. When she got back to her seat, the ground suddenly rumbled. Haruto thought it was an earthquake and grabbed onto his desk while telling Karen to grab onto something. At that moment, he heard a scream coming from Mina, who was falling towards his direction. He caught her, however. Upon realizing that it's him, Mina ran away, blushing. Haruto, who had no idea about Mina's real reason for running away, felt down and wondered if it really was that bad. Karen called out to him, and when they looked around, they were no longer in the classroom, but summoned in a different place. As Haruto wondered where they were, a high-pitched voice worriedly exclaimed at how many of them there were. This isn't how it was supposed to go. The butler advised her to explain the situation to the heroes first. She cleared her throat before introducing herself to everyone. She is Philia Elmond, the first princess of the Kingdom of Elmond. While everyone murmured in confusion, Karen and Haruto realized what was happening. Philia continued, using magic to show them a 3D version of their kingdom and explaining that this world is different from the one they came from. According to the legends, they have summoned them as heroes. Haruto knew it. It's isekai, summoning. Karen also thought of the same thing and nudged him, wondering what kind of power he has. He looked at her with concern. Is that really where she's starting? Well, it's the classic setup, isn't it? She found this to be very exciting. Their conversation was interrupted by one of their classmates, Yohei, questioning what they meant by hero. He glared at Philia, claiming that she'd been spouting nonsense this whole time. The student with glasses grabbed his shoulder, trying to calm him down and explaining that this situation was just like the manga he was reading. Yohei could not believe it. After all, that was just a manga. But the glasses dude insisted that it's true, because what kind of trick could bring their whole class to a whole other world? The only way that could happen is if someone used actual magic. Hearing that, the other students began murmuring amongst themselves. Karen laughed at them all wanting to go home, but since they were here, they might as well enjoy it. Philia assured them that it's okay for them to feel confused, but once they fulfill their mission, they'll safely return to their original world. According to the legend, Yohei exclaimed in anger, asking if she wanted them to defeat a demon lord or something because that's how mangas usually start. Philia answered affirmatively. Well, isn't this cliché? Their kingdom has summoned heroes once every few centuries to face threats to the continent. The nature of those threats varies each time, but legends tell of heroes slaying fearsome dragons and demon lords. Honestly, they still didn't know what kind of threat it would be this time. That means they can't go home until they figure it out. Philia bowed her head, apologizing, when suddenly a person appeared beside her. It's her brother, Rogues Elmond, the first prince of this kingdom. Philia turned to her brother in worry because there normally would only be one hero, but there were about 30 of them. She's probably worried about how they'll host them all. Hearing that, the glasses dude spoke up, asking whether they might not be able to treat them properly because there were more of them than expected. Are they saying that they were summoned without consent and now they have to complete some vague mission just to go home, without even knowing the details or being offered any kind of reward? He warned them not to dare mess with them. They can call them heroes all they want, but if they can't even pay them, then they're not lifting a finger. The other students rallied with him, making Philia flustered. She waved her hands, assuring them the royal family will, of course, give them the finest hospitality, and once they know the nature of the threat, surely someone will be able to take care of it with this many people. Yohei clenched his fist, shouting, "Who exactly will do it? After all, this place didn't look all that advanced. Do they even have baths in this world?" One of the mages spoke up, accusing Yohei of mocking them. Yohei turned to him in anger, and Philia stopped the mage from provoking them further, as they are the summoned heroes. Meanwhile, Karen whispered to Haruto about Yohei not being able to last a minute without starting something. Haruto agreed. It's the usual with him. Suddenly, rogues appeared behind Yohei and grabbed his chin, assuring them not to worry, as he'll make sure their daily needs are taken care of and that he'll handle the investigation into the threats as well. Then, he turned to Yohei, asking if he was even listening. Yohei grabbed Rogues' arm, telling him to let go since he was freaking him out. Rogues smirked, repeating his question, this time, releasing a suffocating pressure. Yohei finally backed down, sitting back on the floor. Rogues clapped his hands to get everyone's attention and asked someone to explain what they wanted and what would satisfy them since they didn't know what people from another world truly desired yet. Megumi raised her hand, and Rogues turned to her, asking her to come to his room tonight. The students blushed and exclaimed in shock, knowing exactly what that meant. Megumi, on the other hand, was confused. Did it really have to be his room? What a strange thing to ask. Isn't being invited to his room an honor? Megumi thought about it. Guess she had no choice. Mina tried to stop her, but Rogues had already settled it. Then, he informed everyone that a summoning doesn't work unless both sides agree to it. They didn't expect this many, but it just means that someone among them must have truly wanted to change this world. There was no need to rush, as those who wished for it will act on their own, just as they intended, and in the end, everyone will get what they deserve. Megumi excitedly asked whether they could use magic as well. Just as she expected, people who get summoned always have special powers. Rogues answered in affirmation, showing off his magic. Additionally, there are powers known as skills aside from magic. Summoned heroes gain physical abilities far above this world's standard, and they're granted special skills as well. It's not a bad deal, right? Yohei clenched his fist in excitement. Now that's what they should have led with. Then, he asked what kind of power he had. Learning about magic and skills flipped everyone's attitude upside down. Earlier they wanted to go home, but now they're hoping to get some kind of strong power. Karen snickered, nudging Haruto. He's also starting to get a little excited, isn't he? Haruto looked away, admitting to it. Rogues turned around, glancing at Philia. Skills are his little sister's area of expertise, so he decided to leave it to her. She stepped forward to check everyone's skills, and a magic circle appeared before her eyes as she used her appraisal skill. As expected of heroes, they all possess truly impressive skills, especially Yohei. His power is exceptional. Yohei beamed in excitement and asked what kind of power it was. Well, since they all came from a world without skills or magic, it'd be best to show them directly. So, Philia called upon Haruto to assist her as she thought he'd be the perfect example for everyone to see. After all, his power is truly remarkable. Yohei protested, asking why she would pick Haruo, and demanded that she pick him over some nobody. He wants to be the main character so bad. The glasses dude grabbed his shoulder to stop him after noticing the mage's hostile stare. With that, Yohei clicked his tongue and settled back down. But of course, he showed his disdain by glaring at Haruto. Haruto nervously glanced back at him before stepping forward, with Yohei gritting his teeth. Then, he asked Philia what exactly he needed to do, so she pointed to the side, asking him to look over there. Once he did, his eyes widened after seeing a cage that held what seemed to be a wild tiger captive inside. It was a creature called a Regal. It's still young, but once it matures, it becomes as dangerous as a dragon. And even at this size, it's ranked B, as strong as 100 regular soldiers. Haruto had a bad feeling about this, but still listened carefully to Philia's explanation about his skill. Apparently, his skill is Tame. Philia suddenly hugged him from behind, with her melons pressing against his back, which caused Mina to glare at them. Normally, a monster of this rank couldn't be tamed, but with Haruto's power, it might just work. She pushed him towards the cage, asking him to place his hand towards the Regal. Haruto protested, leaning back in fear as the Regal began to growl. Philia assured him that it was okay. As long as he says the words, the power will activate. He just had to say Tame. Haruto was about to protest when Yohei shouted from the back for him to just hurry up and do it. Pressured, he raised his hand and shouted, Tame. A magic circle appeared before his hand and a gush of strong wind swept everyone. The cage's lock popped open, causing Haruto to scream in fear when the Regal jumped towards him. However, he soon froze with his mouth still wide open when the Regal hugged him instead and pushed him down on the floor, licking his face. This is Tame, a skill that allows him to command a beast. With his power as a hero, he should be able to tame any opponent. After that, Philia appraised the other students' skills. Meanwhile, Haruto sat on a corner, with the Regal lying on his lap. Karen approached him, praising his tame skill as it looked like he's completely tamed the Regal. She sat next to him and asked what its name was. Haruto thought about it and decided to name him Rai, which the Regal seemed to love. Karen burst out laughing though. Did he name it Rai because it's a Regal? That's way too simple. Haruto pouted and just ignored her words, advising her to show her skills to Philia as well. Actually, she already showed her. Her skill is mixing, which seemed to make her a bit better at mixing stuff. It's kind of plain. What a bummer. She wanted something flashier. Well, Haruto bets that she can master it anyway. Karen chuckled, leaning back on the wall. She'll do her best. Haruto looked towards everyone and wondered what kind of power they got. His eyes drifted to Yohei, who easily punched a wall. His skill was body enhancement, a skill that multiplies his physical abilities. As expected of a hero, he was able to smash a royal court mage's earth wall magic. Hearing that, Yohei smugly smirked at the irritated mage he's been beefing with since earlier. The glasses dude approached him. Yohei's skill was simple and strong, perfect for someone like him. Yohei playfully wrapped his arm around Akimoto's shoulder and asked what kind of skill he got, though he bet it's not as good as his. Akimoto fixed his glasses and told him to step back. Yohei, though confused, did as he said. As soon as he did, rocks fell on the student passing by where Yohei was standing earlier. Akimoto's skill was Future Sight, a skill that lets him see a little bit into the future for a moment. Yohei ignored him and approached Megumi, who was healing the student that got hurt earlier. Her skill seems to be healing magic. On the other hand, Philia appraised Mina's skill, and it turned out to be magic enhancement. It amplifies magic abilities several times over, and is on par with Yohei's body enhancement. Karen saw the commotion surrounding Mina and told Haruto about it. She's his childhood friend, isn't she? Haruto just replied that it isn't his business. Also, that childhood friend thing was old news. She avoids him now anyway. To test Mina's skill, they set up a target she could hit. She was worried though, since she never used magic before. Right, Philia apologized and explained how to do it step by step. First, she needs to imagine fire. Then, channel that image into her mana and release it, Philia demonstrated, hitting the target. That's the basic way to use magic, though it didn't look basic at all. Karen, who was watching with Haruto, whispered that Philia was kind of rough. Haruto thought she was just open-minded. That's how noble people are. The main character wannabe tried it out on his own and caused a huge fire he couldn't put out. Mina was about to get hurt, so Haruto rushed to her side. However, rogues came to the rescue and casted the spell Aqua Ring to put out the fire. He assured them not to worry as he was here, so even if Mina loses control, he can handle it. Yohei, who was now drenched, glared at Rogues, who just smirked at him. Then, Rogues turned to Mina, telling her to do as she liked. If anything happens, he'll deal with it. Mina was about to protest, but Yohei dragged her harshly and ordered her to do it. Why is bro beefing with everyone? Mina gritted her teeth when she felt Yohei's strong grip and screamed, causing her magic to explode, and a dome of magic circles surrounded her while Yohei got flung away, like he deserved. Everyone watched in concern, wondering what was happening. Rogues ordered everyone to calm Mina down, which Philia and the mages obeyed. However, Mina's power was too immense, and they ended up getting repelled. At this rate, Mina will get hurt. Philia looked around, using her appraisal skill. She seemed to be looking for someone. When she found Haruto, she asked him to use his skill and tame Mina. Everyone turned to him, unable to believe that was possible because that's technically brainwashing. Yohei shouted that was insane, but Philia urged him to hurry. If they don't, her magic will consume her and she'll become a monster. Still, Haruto hesitated, wondering whether it's really okay to turn a person into a familiar. As he was getting consumed by his thoughts, Karen patted his back hard enough to snap him back to reality and told him that this was not the time to hesitate. Seeing Mina slowly turn into a monster, Haruto stepped forward with determination. He just had to do the same thing he did with Rai, right? Bet. He held out his arms and activated his skill, Tame. However, he was getting pushed back by Mina's pressure. It feels like he's going to be blown away. Philia grabbed his arm to support him and begged him to hang in there just for a bit more. Haruto turned back to Mina, who mumbled his name and reached out to him. Suddenly, he was brought back to that time Mina cried when they were kids, apologizing and claiming that it was her fault. At that time, he patted her head and assured her that it was okay because he'll protect her no matter what. That promise back then, he'll definitely fulfill it. An explosion happened, blinding everyone's sight. Once everything subsided and the magic circles broke into pieces, Haruto was shown holding the collapsed Mina. Philia patted Haruto's shoulder and told him that it was a success. The taming of Mina is complete. The others murmured amongst themselves, worried that Tame seemed to work on humans as well. Haruto looked around with concern as Mina slowly woke up. A few days after that incident, Haruto stood by a tree, sighing. Karen, who was beside him, teased him that happiness will run away if he sighs. Though, he feels like it's already run away. Karen warned him that he'll get stabbed if he's serious, earning another sigh from Haruto, who asked who'd stab him. After all, everyone's already avoiding him and looking at him weirdly. Several days after they were summoned, their days in the other world weren't difficult. In the mornings, they studied things like the history of this country, the mission of past heroes, economics, and writing. In the afternoons, they trained in light magic and combat. As expected of heroes, everyone quickly acquired skills that surpassed even the magic users. Haruto let out another sigh, which Karen pointed out. Just then, a girl got pushed back and ended up in front of them. However, when she saw Haruto, she quickly ran away screaming. Seems like everyone is living in constant fear of being tamed by him. Well, that's bound to happen if they found out that taming works on people. Haruto asked if Karen was allowed to stick with him, which made her laugh. If he's not around, then she'd have no one to talk to. Her casual response made him wonder if she isn't afraid of being tamed by him. Then, he turned to Mina, who was standing by his side. Noticing his stare, Mina asked what the matter was, so Haruto just looked away. Since he tamed her, she hasn't left his side. It must be the effect of taming because unlike before, she's no longer cautious towards him. Since it's a situation where he's monopolizing the class's most beautiful girl, the boys' gazes are also harsh. According to Philia, they don't know how to cancel Tame, but they have to investigate how to cancel it. Haruto could only sigh. Mina observed him with a determined expression. This is her chance. At some point, she unconsciously became unable to interact honestly. She got this from her mom and dad, but now, she can blame it on Tame and do whatever she wants. She was about to hold Haruto's hand when Karen suddenly exclaimed, making her flinch and withdraw her hand. It was just Karen remembering that she left the Nuka fermentation bed as it is. Mina watched Karen and Haruto converse as usual, bickering here and there. Karen, the girl who's always with Haruto, and the same girl she's always envied. When Mina actually talked to her, she seemed to be a really nice girl, but that's exactly why she can't let her guard down. As she thought, Karen was probably using those unrefined glasses to try and not stand out. But she was quite pretty. And her melons. She's probably hiding them as well. No, she shouldn't get too weak. After all, her familiarity is her special privilege. So, she must definitely seize this opportunity. Mina's eyes suddenly widened when she sensed something and warned Haruto. Just as she did, an attack flew towards him, narrowly missing his head. Yohei apologized, though he didn't look apologetic at all. He had a smirk on his face, claiming that his magic flew off. Akamoto, who was behind him, told him to go right twice, up twice, down twice, right, left, down, left again, right, up, right, left, spin around, and then turn. Yohei turned to him in confusion and was about to ask what he meant when Mina launched a bunch of fire arrows towards him. Finally, he understood what Akimoto meant and dodged as he advised. Unfortunately, he was unscathed and the attacks exploded behind him. He gritted his teeth, glaring at Mina, who used the same excuse as he did earlier. Sparks were all over the air as they glared at each other when Karen suddenly told them not to fight over her. Haruto thought it might not even be for his sake, though it probably is his fault. At that moment, rogues came in and reminded them it's not good for heroes to fight among themselves. He had two women clinging to him as he advised them to get along. All the men were angered and claimed that he's just picking a fight now. Even Yohei was ticked off and glared at him. Rogues just innocently smirked. He was just greeting the girls, but if he has a problem with it, he'll gladly take him on. However, that was impossible. Just the other day, some students challenged Rogues, but they all got crushed by him. Though Rogues was happy that they all seemed to be growing stronger every day, Akimoto's future sight that instantly cut through that many fire arrows and Yohei's body enhancement that allowed him to evade them were both impressive. Then he turned to Mina, who seems to have completely mastered the magic enhancement skill. It's probably the benefit of Tame. Tame increases the abilities of both the tamer and the tamed. By taming the Regal, both of their abilities improved, and by taming Mina, power circulated among the three, further improving the abilities. So the more Haruto tames, the more powerful he becomes. Karen squealed, thinking maybe she should be tamed as well, but as if Haruto's agreeing with that. Suddenly, Rogues appeared between Haruto and Mina. He tried to seduce Mina into coming into his room. However, she refused, claiming she wasn't interested in his room. Rogues was taken aback and glared at Haruto, who was confused. He quietly walked away, waving his hand and telling her that she's free to come if she ever gets curious. Haruto told Mina that she didn't have to reject Rogues that harshly, making her scowl. Then, it would have been okay if she'd gone with him. Is that what he's saying? Haruto was about to refute what she just said, but she already turned away, pouting. The next day, Philia announced in class that they were going to a dungeon. She believed it's about time for everyone to get some practical experience. Rogue said the dungeon has just the right kind of monsters for testing their skills, along with matching rewards, so it's probably a good place to build experience. Karen was excited to hear about the dungeon, while being in another world finally sunk into Haruto. Mina thought it seemed like an easy win if he's experienced, but Haruto doubts that since he wasn't as strong as her. Suddenly, Yohei kicked his desk that was just behind Haruto and asked about the dungeon. Right, they should begin with a lecture on what exactly a dungeon is. A dungeon is a general term for ruins imbued with magic. Inside, there are valuable magical tools, dangerous traps, and monsters. As they go deeper into the dungeon, the concentration of magic increases. Along with that, the danger level of the monsters that appear also rises. The danger level and capture difficulty are determined by the total amount of magic contained. The capture difficulty has 10 stages, and the 7th stage of difficulty and above are unexplored by humanity. They are virtually unmeasurable, and the capture difficulty of the dungeon they're heading to this time is 7. That made the students nervous because of the sudden difficulty, but Philia calmly told them to relax because this time, they're only going up to the 3rd floor. The dungeon has already been conquered up to that floor and has also been mapped, so there's almost no danger, Yohei protested. That means it's not very interesting, which Philia agreed with. It indeed might be boring for a hero. Even so, they'll die if they let their guard down. Even though it's mapped, it doesn't mean there aren't hidden traps. Pitfalls and arrows shooting out are still fine, but there are also cases where they might be teleported to a mysterious space with no exit. That said, as long as they don't carelessly touch unknown objects, they'll be fine. Well, she hopes they enjoy their first dungeon exploration. Perhaps they might even find valuable magic tools or treasures. The departure is tomorrow and the exploration will take all day, so they should make sure they're well prepared. They'll be handing out maps, so they should be sure to study them. The dungeon they're heading to is called the Royal Tomb. The following day, the students entered the dungeon with nervous expressions. Fortunately, Philia was with them, explaining that the dungeon exploration will be conducted in groups of 3, so they should all form teams of 3. As expected, the 3 of them, Haruto, Mina, and Karen, will be a team. If Haruto abandons Karen, she'll end up stuck with the leftovers, and she didn't like that. Meanwhile, Mina is his familiar, so it goes without saying. Haruto asked if they were sure about this, and Karen just assured him that they were. Teamwork is important, so they should all just get along. Behind them, the main character wannabe is watching with a smirk that says he's up to no good. Actually, the night before the dungeon exploration, Rogue spoke to him, claiming that Haruto is dangerous. If it becomes known that there's a hero who can tame humans, it will cause needless conflict. Yohei probably thinks the same way, right? But it's not like Yohei cared, and why would he even call him out here anyway? Rogues tapped his shoulder to calm him down. He knew Yohei didn't like him, but he dislikes Haruto even more, didn't he? Of course, the reason they all haven't left the royal palace is to keep his existence a secret, which is why he wants Yohei to eliminate him. Yohei smirked, asking if he was sure about this. Of course he was, and he's the only one among the heroes strong enough to handle it. However, besides Haruto's strength, he'll have a tough time with Mina always by his side. Therefore, he handed him a magic tool, and will even lend him his personal guard, the strongest force in the country. The operation is tomorrow, and no one will blame him for one person disappearing. After all, accidents are common in dungeons. Back to the dungeon, Philia reminded them to watch out for traps and monsters, and to report it immediately if anyone in their trio is injured or goes missing. Then, she apologized to Haruto for asking him to take the dangerous front position, and he assured her that it was fine since it's not her fault. 2 hours earlier, Yohei asked Philia to confirm if the front of the line was the most dangerous part. Akamoto looked at him in confusion, while Philia agreed that it is indeed the most dangerous part. Whoever's up front engages the enemy first, and during retreat, they become the rear guard. Yohei smirked, claiming that the strongest one should obviously be up front. Philia once again agreed. That's why the front should be led by the kingdom's strongest, Rogue's royal guard. However, Yohei disagreed and pushed Haruto to take the lead. Besides, isn't it unpleasant having someone who can tame humans behind them? That's terrifying. Remembering that good-for-nothing Yohei made Haruto frown. Then he apologized to Karen and Mina for ending up in the front because they teamed up with him. Karen assured him that it was fine. It's not like she had anyone else to pair with besides him. With Mina, she's Haruto's familiar, so it was only natural. Haruto also thanked Rai for carrying the bags. When he suddenly sensed something up front, the guard asked what it was, and Yohei mocked him, asking if he got spooked. However, a bunch of eyes appeared in the dark, and bat-type monsters began flying towards them. While the students panicked and tried to run away, Mina coolly handled it by using a firewall. The monsters got burned and fell to the ground. From then on, Haruto truly proved himself as a hero. The other classmates handled the monsters without much trouble, and the dungeon conquest went smoothly. And then, they finally reached the gate to the lower levels, where the monsters beyond will be even stronger. So, Philia suggested taking a break for now. They all laid mats to sit down on and eat while taking a break. Haruto observed everyone. Looks like everyone's totally exhausted, especially Karen. Then, he turned to Mina to ask if she was okay. She answered that she was, but soon took it back. Actually, she was tired, so she asked him to lend her his lap. Karen suddenly got up as if she was having fun watching the drama unfold, but Haruto immediately stopped her and suggested she and Karen both use Rai as a pillow instead. However, Karen hugged Rai and apologized, claiming that Rai is only for one person. In that case, Haruto finally agreed. Mina slowly laid down on his lap, but got up as soon as she did, claiming that she was just kidding. Even if she's been tamed, she still has boundaries. Haruto agreed, especially with people watching. Karen smirked teasingly and asked if it'd be okay if no one was watching. Hearing Haruto answer that he'd allow just that much, Mina's world crashed. She blew it. She couldn't even hear the two's conversation, and just wondered why. Why is she always like this? She snapped out of it when Haruto called out to her, asking if she was okay. She looked away, assuring him that she was fine. Haruto was doubtful though, since she looked pale. Wasn't she locked in a storage room once? So he thought that maybe she has trouble with dark, closed spaces. Mina smiled, happy that he remembered something from way back like that. Their moment was interrupted when Karen suddenly remembered she got something good. Tada! It's a mixed potion. This one restores mind and body, and even reduces physical damage. She soon glared when she noticed their doubtful expressions. Who wouldn't be skeptical? She gave Haruto a ton of failed ones last time. Just then, Philia appeared behind Karen and appraised the potion, assuring them not to worry as it works exactly like she said. However, she was soon called by a guard. Karen stared at her, feeling jealous of her appraisal skill since it synergizes so well with alchemy too. She turned back to them, handing the mixed potion. Alright then, since she's got their approval, they should drink up. Though still a bit doubtful, they drank it and opened their eyes in shock. Not only did they recover, but they feel more energized than usual. Karen giggled and thanked them for the compliment. Watching them was Yohei, along with Rogues' royal guard, who asked for the thing that Rogues gave him. Yohei brought it out, and the royal guard activated it. Now, they begin. The thing in Yohei's hand began to flash light as he questioned what that was. The royal guard informed him that it was a teleportation trap. That thing Philia mentioned yesterday about being thrown into some mysterious space. Yohei asked the royal guard what was going on, and the royal guard calmed him down since he can toss it away before it activates. Yohei smirked, throwing it towards Haruto, who caught it. Yohei had an evil smirk as he watched the teleportation trap stab Haruto's hand, making him unable to throw it. He warned Karen and Mina to get back, but they clung to him even tighter. It's already too late anyway, and there's no way Mina was letting him go alone. After all, she's his familiar. Haruto clicked his tongue as countless hands popped out of the teleportation trap and covered them like a dome. When it disappeared, the three were also gone. The teleportation trap dropped to the ground, sliced in half as Philia called out to them in a panic. Haruto remembered a memory about him conversing with Karen while looking at Mina, but when she noticed his stare, she looked away from him. Karen tried to grab his attention by calling out to him, but he wouldn't look back at her until her voice got louder and he woke up with Mina on top of him and Karen by his side, calling his name. He sat up and looked around the room they were in, wondering where they were. Karen had no idea. She couldn't see any exit either. Right, they got teleported by that trap. The magical energy in the air feels like the royal tombs, so maybe they were sent to a lower level. Karen was relieved. She thought they got flung into some mysterious dimension. He turned to her and noticed that her glasses came off. Karen scoffed at his bland reaction. Well, he knew they were fake, so it's not like she needed them. Karen blushed, surprised that he noticed. She really is weird, wearing glasses to hide her pretty face. At that moment, Mina woke up, greeting Haruto a good morning. The two were stunned because this was very, very unusual of her. After realizing what she did, she ran away screaming in embarrassment. Haruto was relieved that she looked fine though, and it might be thanks to Karen's potion that none of them took major damage. Mina asked where they were, and Haruto explained that they were probably in a lower level of the royal tomb. Karen thought that someone may come to rescue them if it's not too deep, but Haruto doubted that. Mina asked what he meant by that, and he claimed that Yohei was smiling at that moment, and so was the commander of the royal guard. The two were surprised, and Mina asked why they would do that. Haruto thought that the whole trap was probably staged by Yohei and the royal guard to get rid of him. Now that he thinks back, it felt kind of fake. Karen wondered why, though. She can expect it from Yohei, but doesn't the royal guard answer directly to Rogues? Haruto didn't want to believe it, but Rogues must be behind this. Hearing that, Mina was horrified. Is it because of her? Because she turned Rogues down? Haruto grabbed her shoulders, assuring her that it wasn't her fault. It's because his tame skill works on people that they see him as a threat. Just then, Mina noticed the wounds on Haruto's hand. She knelt down and bandaged it, asking what they should do now. Even if they're lucky enough to escape, they can't go back to the castle if Rogues is against them. Haruto's the one they're after, so if he just fakes his death, then the two of them could go back. However, the two immediately rejected that idea. Then maybe they could go to another country. Since his tame skill is strong, maybe he can open a zoo or something. Mina stood up, claiming that she'd join him and help with the zoo. Whatever it is, she's sticking with him. She's his familiar, so she's got every right to follow him, doesn't she? As for Karen, she'll just be miserable and alone if she goes back alone. And honestly, she'd rather die here with him. Haruto asked her not to say such ominous stuff, though he can't exactly deny it either. First, they've got to get out of here, but there's no exit in sight. Well, at least they have food for a few days. Suddenly, Rai growled, and a monster barged in from the wall to attack Haruto, who Rai defended with his body. The huge wolf-type monster landed on the ground, glaring at them. Mina manifested her magic and suggested hitting the monster with it, but Haruto stopped her, saying he'll handle it since there's something he's been wanting to try. Just as the monster lunged forward with its mouth wide open, Haruto used his skill, Tame, and a harsh wind swept by them as the monster smirked and snuggled against Haruto with its tail wagging. How amazing. He even tamed something this strong. Actually, it's thanks to Mina. The monster felt her powerful magic and wanted to avoid a fight, enabling him to tame it. Karen was pleasantly surprised. Even she can tell that everyone's power has increased. Right. After all, this monster is about as strong as Mina, who's probably the strongest in the kingdom, aside from Rogues. So having something with equal power is a huge benefit. Since Tamer grows stronger based on their familiar's abilities, and familiars also grow stronger based on their tamers, Karen felt jealous. She wished she could be tamed. Mina didn't want to share her privilege and quickly changed the topic, asking what they were going to name Haruto's new familiar. Haruto thought about it, when Karen claimed that it reminds her of the golden retriever she used to have. In that case, Haruto decided to name him Reito, which Karen thought was pretty random. It's typical for MCs to have bad naming sense, it seems. Well, it doesn't matter since Reito loves his new name. Haruto walked over to the hole Reito caused in the wall and asked him to widen the hole a bit so they can fit through more easily. However, Reito whined. Guess it's too much to ask. Well, they can fit through it. Probably. Suddenly, Reito howled, causing the room to rumble. Then, a bunch of monsters barged inside the room through the ground and walls. They were all of Rito's packmates. It seems like he was their alpha. Mina didn't want to believe it, but she's guessing that Haruto will tame all of them. And she was right. He planned to try doing it. He raised his hands and activated his skill, taming all of them. Mina caught Haruto, who stumbled due to using too much mana. Then he pointed out that her power must have increased as well. He's right. It's easier to control her magic now. Haruto got up and walked around, sniffing and confusing Mina. Looks like he might have gained some new skills. He can now smell things more sharply and also see through walls. It was probably Rito and the others' abilities being reflected onto him. This'll make dungeon crawling a lot easier. When he turned back around, he saw Mina hugging Karen, warning him not to peek, and even calling him a pervert. She was fine with smelling and seeing through walls, but if he dares to use those lewd skills on Karen, he's really going to have it. Haruto denied the accusation. She's got it all wrong. He only sees it like a thermal image or something, and he can turn it on and off. Karen assured Mina that she was okay with it, and apologized for unconsciously using her first name. Mina thought it was fine since she calls her by her first name as well. Karen then turned to Haruto. Gaining power and skills. That's a total growth cheat. This world doesn't seem to have experience points or leveling up, so only Haruto and his familiars will keep getting stronger. If the familiars can have kids, wouldn't the strength multiply like crazy? That made Mina blush like a tomato, so Karen assured her that it wasn't that kind of thing. Haruto, who was now by the wall, called out to the two of them to inform them that this wall was thin, so they might be able to break through it and move forward. They walked over to him, with Mina asking which way were they going. Do they go up and head back to the entrance or down to the deepest floor and try to conquer the dungeon? Karen opened up the map, wondering if there was a mechanism that connects the deepest floor to the exit. But this was an uncharted difficulty level 7 dungeon, so no one knows that danger lies below. Still, since monsters like Rito are around, they must already be pretty deep down. So in terms of distance, heading for the boss might actually be faster. But since they weren't in a rush, Karen suggested heading for the entrance. But Haruto disagreed. They're going for the dungeon clear. Since they can't rely on the kingdom anymore, they'll need the treasures supposedly found in dungeon clears. It'll be dangerous, so will they all come with him? He nervously waited for their answer, thinking he'd get turned down. But Mina agreed to go without hesitation. After all, she's his familiar, isn't she? Also, how many times does Karen have to say it? Even if she went back, she'd be all alone, so she'll follow him to the end. Well then, They should go and conquer this dungeon. Back at the royal palace, rogues commended Yohei for doing well. But Yohei wasn't happy about it because of the situation he's in right now. Because they got rid of Haruto and the others, everyone's looking at him like he's some kind of murderer. Akamoto, who was quietly sitting there, fixed his glasses, finally understanding everything that happened on the day of the expedition. However, why is he telling him this? That's because he's the one shaping the class atmosphere, and rogues wanted him to support that poor main character wannabe, the hero who gave their classmates their freedom since they couldn't let a dangerous hero who can tame people roam freely. If Haruto's the reason they're confined at the royal palace, then does this mean he's letting them go now? Akamoto fixed his glasses again, his eyes narrowing on rogues, as he asked if getting Mina and the others caught up in it was part of the plan. No way he just addressed Karen as others. Anyway, rogues denied and claimed it didn't really matter since Mina was far too affected by the taming, and Karen didn't have any particularly valuable skill either. That's cold. His sister Philia was pretty upset that those three disappeared. That's because Philia's a kind girl, but the life of a hero who's not useful to the kingdom is insignificant. After all, they're foreigners. Akamoto's eyes widened. So he means if they don't want to end up like Hatuto, they need to prove their worth. But he couldn't help but ask whether Haruto and the others really are dead. Since all they saw was them vanishing, it's possible that they are still alive. However, rogues cut him off, leisurely drinking his tea and claiming that was impossible. The magic tool that erased them is quite wicked. It measures the target's strength and teleports them to a floor in the dungeon that's impossible to conquer. For them maybe, the 15th, no, even below the 20th floor. And just so they know, the royal tomb has 25 floors in total. Haruto's Regal was a monster from the 7th floor. And below the 7th floor, the monster's strength increases by 30% per level. So, on the 20th floor, they'd be 30 times stronger than Rai. And there are also countless monsters, meaning survival is impossible. Akamoto countered that Haruto had the tame skill, so even the strongest monsters could be his familiars if he used it. Rogues just laughed. He worries too much. He assured them that it was fine since tame doesn't work if the power gap is too wide. Akamoto finally felt relieved, thinking there was nothing to worry about. Psyche. Haruto was able to tame all the monsters they encountered. Karen looked back at the monsters behind them. Looks like he's gotten a lot more familiars. They've already passed like 3 more floors, but Haruto still had a dissatisfied expression on his face. So Mina asked what was wrong. It's just that, in terms of raw power, these guys were stronger than them before they entered the dungeon. But now that they're tamed, Rai, Rito, and Mina are even stronger. It's strange. It seems like the boost from Tame isn't equal for everyone. Karen thought about it, and came to the conclusion that it might be a matter of closeness. She pointed out that he gave Rai and Rito their names, but he was too busy to name the others, and that might be why they're not as strongly enhanced. That means the one who got the biggest power boost was Mina. She teased her, wondering what was going on. Mina was flustered and claimed she didn't get stronger. Not at all. Karen had a teasing smirk. She totally did. If she says that, then Haruto is way stronger now too. Well, that's because he's the tamer, so it's only natural that he is. Haruto interjected into their conversation, or more like one-sided teasing, and thought it was a good thing that they're getting stronger. After all, this is where it really starts to get serious. They stood before a huge and ominous double door that leads to the boss chamber. Though, the document said there's a boss before the bottom floor. It's a necessary obstacle to clear the dungeon. Mina could feel an intense power from within and thought they should leave the one whose levels are too low. Haruto agreed as he didn't want any unnecessary casualties. Karen cheered, leaning on Haruto's familiars. She seemed to be happy being stuck on babysitting duty. Haruto glanced at her and asked her to wait with the others, making Karen pout. She got up and claimed she was just kidding. She'll help too. Haruto was about to protest when Karen handed him a potion. They're the mixing potions she made with rare materials that they found on the way. It increases stamina, endurance, mental stability, muscle strength, magic power, basically a bunch of stuff. So they should drink up. Fighting isn't the only way to be helpful. Haruto agreed and took the potions, which he and Mina drank while thanking Karen. It tastes awful, but it definitely helps. Once they reached the bridge halfway, the scenery suddenly changed. Haruto looked around wondering what was going on. Meanwhile, Mina was looking up, unable to believe what she was seeing. Suddenly the ground rumbled and a harsh gush of wind brushed past them, as if something landed before them. It was a dragon. Karen, who stayed back, actually saw them vanish suddenly. She just hopes that they're all alright. Haruto tried to tame the dragon, but it seemed to be ineffective against a monster that strong. The dragon roared, causing them to fly back and fall on the ground. The dragon tried to attack them while they were down, but Rai and Rito grabbed them out of there. They hid behind a rock watching the dragon rampage. It's strong. Is that the power of a dragon? Mina asked what they should do now, and Haruto told her he'll use Tame again and asked them to buy some time. Mina argued that it didn't work just now, so there's no point in doing it again, but Haruto insisted that there was another way. She was about to protest, but Haruto's pleading tone made her move in accordance with his request. She rode Rito and attacked the dragon to grab its attention. She nodded at Haruto before turning back to the dragon, dodging its breath attack. This might be the first time that Mina's being relied on by Haruto. When she was a child, she only ever relied on him. As she grew up, she became more capable than Haruto, and a distance had grown between the two of them. That's why she was frustrated that she couldn't be stronger. Please, just that one word is making her act up. She casted Fire-Scale Dragon Worm and fired it off towards the dragon. Haruto ran to the side, using his skill again to try and tame the dragon. He made eye contact with it, and suddenly he was transported into a dark space. He turned around when he heard a voice explaining that Tame is a contract. If he can't force it into a familiar, then he'll make it a familiar through negotiation. Haruto gulped, agreeing. That's right. He felt it with the first Tame from it, a deep intellect and a strong wish. So, he wants her to become a familiar in exchange for granting that wish? She already understands his talent through Tame, and it seems like this, too, is fate. Then, he should show her that he can make it come true. Haruto snapped back to reality at the same time the dragon vanished. Mina looked around confused, so Haruto called out to her from below and informed her that the battle was over. She got back down and asked what he meant by that, when the door suddenly opened, and in a flash they were transported back to the bridge. They entered the boss chamber with Karen wondering if there was any treasure or anything they could use. Then, she clung to Haruto in fear, pointing up to a humongous female dragon. That is the true form of the dragon they were just fighting. The dragon introduced herself. She's the holy dragon Mephiles. Mina heard about her in a lecture. Isn't she the hero dragon who prevented the calamity? Why is such an important figure here? Mephiles glared at them, claiming it's their foolishness. Truth is, she was sealed in this land by a hero of the past. Because of that, her power has also weakened. They questioned why a hero dragon was sealed by a hero. Isn't it a hero's mission to fight calamities? Exactly. That's why countless heroes have been summoned, but calamities have only occurred 3 times in these 1,000 years. Mina retorted that that can't be possible because countless heroes have been summoned. Well, Mephiles doesn't know the true reason why this world's people perform unnecessary summons. If there's no calamity to fight against, they just pick a random opponent and pretend they're the calamity. And then, the heroes mistakenly think they're fighting a calamity or seal an enemy that appears. That means Mephiles is also one of the victims. Karen felt empathetic when she suddenly remembered something. They said heroes can return to their original world by defeating a calamity, right? Then, there's no way for them to return. Haruto thought it was unclear. He wants more power because the prince himself, who lied about the calamity, might be the enemy. In that case, they need power so they don't lose to him. That's why they'll tame the holy dragon Mephiles. Mina asked if he was sure, since he seemed to struggle even against that fake earlier. Mephiles smirked. It was because she promised she could if he undo her seal. Karen asked Haruto if he knew how to undo the seal. Actually, he didn't know. But there's a possibility that Mephiles could regain enough power to break the seal through strengthening by taming. With Mephiles' urging, Haruto used his tame skill to try and make her his familiar. However, he ended up blacking out and only woke up after taking a stimulant from Karen. Mephiles' power was too immense, and it knocked him unconscious. But thanks to that, he must have gained great power. Indeed, Haruto feels an incredible power, but he wasn't able to bring Mephiles enough power to break her seal. Haruto apologized, and Mephiles assured him that it was fine since there's still a possibility. If he becomes stronger, then her power will also increase. Isn't that how it works? Then he should become stronger, leave this place, and head towards a good place, to Paradise. Paradise is a dungeon where powerful monsters gather. It will be a good source of power. However, the difficulty of Paradise is 9 because the calamity from 200 years ago, Gu, is sealed deep within. If she recalls, humans ranked dungeons on a scale of 10. For reference, without fighting her, this place's difficulty would be rated 6. Nah, more like an 8. Karen thought it would be better not to go, or rather, to stop, but Mephiles claimed it was better to hurry because Gu's seal is about to break. If he's released, the continent will once again face the danger of destruction. Haruto asked why that was happening, and she explained that magic tools are set up to attract monsters under the monster's seal. Originally, the monsters gathered were supposed to drain his magical power, weakening the calamity's strength. But instead, he started taking magical power from the monsters and gaining strength. At this rate, the seal will be broken soon. In that case, Haruto thought it would be better to retrieve those magic tools, to which Mephiles agreed. She told him to go do it, and while he's at it, he should tame the gathered monsters to gain power. It'd be hitting two birds with one stone. That's true, but Haruto was worried about it having a difficulty of 9. Mephiles laughed, telling him not to worry. If she was in her prime, this difficulty would be nothing. Still, they looked unreliable with such shabby equipment. So she gave them new equipment and told them to go. At the same time, Yohei and the others continued to conquer dungeons. He slayed monsters after monsters, laughing at how weak they are. Akimoto grabbed his shoulder and told him to take a short break because everyone's exhausted. Yohei ignored him and lunged forward to defeat more monsters. He didn't care that the others were exhausted or injured and was too focused on conquering the dungeon. Once they finally reached the boss chamber and defeated the boss monster, Akimoto blasted the ceiling, while Philia informed them that there's a talk of having a select group of heroes, Yohei and Akimoto included, to tackle a higher level dungeon. Akimoto asked whether that was safe as this current one was only difficulty level 3, but now they're suddenly being sent to an uncharted difficulty level 5 dungeon. Yohei playfully smacked his back, teasing him for being scared and assuring him that they'll be fine. Additionally, the kingdom will provide full support. After all, it's time to publicize the heroes' strength beyond their borders, and clearing a high difficulty uncharted dungeon is the perfect way to do that. Their fame will surely echo across the continent. Akimoto seemed convinced, claiming that they had to do it. Behind him, the ceiling collapsed on the monster that suddenly appeared behind him. It seems he attacked the ceiling earlier because he foresaw this situation. Yohei's growing stronger by the day, and Akimoto's precognition is lasting longer. As expected, these two are exceptionally powerful even among the heroes. Yohei smirked, telling Philia to leave it to them. Even if some calamity is lurking in that dungeon, they'll definitely crush it. Meanwhile, Haruto and the others finally arrived at the town of Kask, at the base of paradise. It was surprisingly lively and packed with adventurers hoping to strike it rich in paradise. The dungeon rewards were pretty amazing after all, so they could understand why people would risk their lives for it. Plus, paradise is structured so the deeper they go towards the demon at the final floor, the stronger the monsters get, making it great for testing their strength as well. Though it doesn't make it any better that they're heading to the final floor to recover the magical tools to weaken the demon's seal. However, they didn't need to worry as they've powered up with new gear as well. At that moment, a girl approached them, asking if they were adventurers and if they had a place to stay. If they haven't yet, she knows of a good inn called Shoyute. Haruto asked if she was working here. Bingo, she's Lisa, a worker in that inn. So, what do they say? She'll even throw in a little extra service. Mina blushed at the mention of service, her mind immediately going dirty. Lisa clarified that she'll throw in an extra dish with dinner, which Haruto found to be quite tempting. Then, it's settled. She'll escort them back to the inn. Karen side-eyed Mina. When Mina noticed her stare, she asked what was wrong, and Karen teased her for being kind of prudish, making Mina blush in embarrassment. She claimed that it was a misunderstanding, but Karen doesn't believe her. Lisa called out to two of them to hurry, so Karen skipped towards them, leaving Mina, who's still unable to believe that she got called prude, behind. When they got to the inn, they were shocked to find only one room available. The innkeeper apologized as everything else was already booked, and Lisa thought there was no problem with sharing a room since they're all in the same party anyway. Remembering Karen's words earlier, Mina shouted that there was no way she's agreeing to that. Nope, not at all. Then, she walked away, inviting them for a meal. Haruto was left dumbfounded, wondering what had gotten into her. Though, they followed behind her anyway. They sat on a table, admiring the plates of food served before them, and began digging in. Their tears began to fall as they savored the taste, surprising Lisa and the other innkeeper. She asked what was wrong, and Haruto replied that it was because they were so good. Lately, they've only had dry, tasteless bread that doesn't spoil, which is the only thing good about it. But Karen thought it was delicious even without comparing it to that. No wonder their place is full. Lisa thanked them and explained that it's full now because the town's booming. After all, the heroes and some royals are coming. They've been the talk of the land, and everyone wants a glimpse. Apparently they cleared an uncharted shadow dungeon, and might tackle paradise next with that momentum. Back at their room, the three wondered what to do, and whether they should leave town now. However, Haruto didn't think that was the right call. It seems like they've got a few days before they arrive, so they should make the most of their time. Mina agreed. They also want to tame monsters in paradise to get stronger, and they still need to retrieve the magical tool weakening the demon's seal deep inside. Karen suggested letting the heroes handle that, but Haruto wasn't sure if the royals even knew about the magical tool, since even the townspeople don't seem to know a demon is sealed inside paradise. What scares Mina the most is if someone ends up provoking the demon halfway, as there's someone who might do that. The main character wannabe, Yohei. Well, it's difficulty level 9 to begin with, so they might not make it to the deepest floor anyway. But more importantly, shouldn't they start thinking about how they're going to sleep? Wanting to change the topic, Mina asked about how Rai and the others were doing. Haruto closed his eyes and connected with his familiars. They're waiting in the nearby forest and there doesn't seem to be any issue. They used to sleep in dungeons that were even more dangerous than forests anyway. Karen asked if he can tell what they're doing now, and Haruto explained that he can sort of sense if they're safe. It must be part of the Tamer's powers. Parents around the world will definitely kill to have that power. Wait, that's not the point. Karen got up, slamming the table and questioning what they're going to do. There are 3 of them, but there's only 2 beds. Haruto thought that she and Mina could use them, and he'll just sleep on the floor. The 2 immediately refused since he needs proper rest as the core of their party. He slept in worse conditions in dungeons though, so the floor's no big deal, but there's no way he's winning an argument against these 2. Karen claimed she'll sleep on the floor since she usually rests during battle anyway, but Mina protested, insisting that she'll be the one to sleep on the floor since she's more physically resilient. Haruto raised his hand to speak. By that logic, he should be the one on the floor. However, the 2 immediately rejected his suggestion, leaving him no choice. Karen insisted that Mina sleep on the bed. After all, she's the familiar. Mina finally agreed, but Karen still needed to rest to do delicate stuff like mixing potions. They got it. If they push the beds together, it'll fit 3 people. Though confused, Haruto still went along with what they wanted and ended up in between them. He asked if they could really sleep like this, but Mina shut him up, claiming that they definitely could. Karen chuckled nervously. This was kind of nerve-wracking. She was almost sure that they could hear her heartbeat. To be honest, they could, though Haruto can't tell if it's his or someone else's. Suddenly, Mina grabbed his sleeve, complaining that he's drifting too far that way and making Karen uncomfortable. Karen chuckled, assuring her that it's fine. She's smaller, so she doesn't mind if Haruto comes over a bit. However, Mina refused. He knew what she meant, right? On the other hand, Karen insisted on using the space wisely, her tone teasing. Haruto gritted his teeth, questioning why the hell he was in the middle, and blamed it on his rock-paper-scissors skills. The next day, the 3 woke up with red faces before entering the forest. Karen looked around, wondering where Rai and the others were. Haruto called them, so they should be here soon. Karen asked what he meant by that, and he explained that if he calls out to them in his mind, they'll respond. Though if they're too far away, it won't reach them. Karen was impressed and asked if he can even hear his familiar's thoughts, worrying Mina, but she sighed in relief when Haruto answered that he couldn't, at least not that well. Soon, his familiars arrived, however, there were all sorts of monsters mixed in with them. Rai jumped to hug Haruto, who was dumbfounded to see that a lot of monsters responded to his call. Looks like the forest monsters want to be strengthened through taming. Karen was surprised that they'd be okay with Haruto becoming their master. They're probably just prioritizing their own safety since this area attracts a lot of adventurers looking for herbs. But shouldn't he do something soon? If a horde like this shows up, the town's bound to send a subjugation squad. She's right. So, Haruto raised his hand and used his tame skill on them. It went on for quite a while because of how many there are, and when it's done, Haruto felt extremely exhausted. Karen turned to a monster in confusion. Seems like there's still one left. It's a white dragon. She didn't know dragons could be this tiny. It was so cute. Haruto used his skill on the dragon that caused a sudden increase of power for him and Mina. Looks like it had the most potential out of all the monsters he tamed today. Guess it's still a dragon, even though it's small. Karen recommended giving it a name, which Haruto thought was a good idea. He decided to name it Lulu. The dragon bowed down and grew a pair of wings. Then, it suddenly bit Haruto's hood and flew up with him dangling in its mouth. Haruto panicked and asked Lulu to put him down as it was dangerous, and the obedient dragon that Lulu is, it let him go. Haruto thought he'd fall, but no, he ended up floating. He watched the town from above, amazed by the scenery, when he suddenly felt being split apart. It's killing intent, and it's coming from paradise. The 3 went to the guild as they needed to register as an adventurer to enter the dungeon, though they say heroes backed by the kingdom didn't need to. Mina wondered if registering would tip off the kingdom about them, but since the guild is said to operate independently from the kingdom, it should probably be fine. After all, it looks like detailed info about the heroes hasn't been made public either. Good thing they attended that guild lecture, otherwise they'd be fugitives again, this time for illegally entering a dungeon. Anyway, Haruto urged them to hurry as the seal on the demon might break any moment now. The old woman at the front desk registered them as adventurers and gave them their guild cards. That was pretty easy. All they did was fill out some paperwork. Karen honestly thought there'd be some kind of test or something. The old woman claimed there's no need for that because she could feel the immense aura coming from Mina and Haruto. However, they should be careful if they're heading into paradise because high-level monsters have been appearing even in the shallower zones lately. Looks like Haruto was right. They should probably hurry and recover that magic tool. The old woman recommended asking an informant if they want more details about paradise. The 3 listened and sought out an old man, who asked them for 3 copper coins as fee for the info. He isn't running a charity, you know. There's no way he's giving out information for free. After receiving the money, he asked what they wanted to know. Is it the map of paradise? Or information regarding the monsters? No, they actually wanted to know about the deeper areas. If that's the case, they needed to pay a bit more. Therefore, Haruto pulled out a gold coin. However, the old man stopped and advised him not to go flashing gold coins around. Well, they didn't look like the type to get pushed around by the average adventurer, but still, better safe than sorry. Then he apologized because he didn't have any information on the deeper areas since no one's made it that far in. If they manage to get there, they should come back and sell him the info. He'll pay them good money for it. In the end, they didn't get any solid info. Well, at least they got a map of the cleared areas, so that's something. Karen asked if they were heading straight into paradise, but to be honest, Haruto's mana was pretty drained after all that mass taming this morning. If they're going, he'd rather be in top shape. So, maybe tomorrow? In that case, Karen suggested exploring the town a bit. They're in another world, so they should make some fun memories while they're here. Haruto and Mina turned to each other before agreeing with a smile. They explored shops they passed through, looking at the items, even teasing each other here and there. They tried on new clothes, new foods, and bought quite a few things they found interesting. Karen was quite happy with her purchase, and was excited to whip up some quality potions once they got back to the inn. Haruto wondered if they'll taste better too, and Karen just replied that it might be possible if he keeps taming like that. When they passed by a corner, they noticed a poster for a hot spring, and decided to go. Karen's eyes were twinkling in excitement, as this was her first time in an open-air bath. The same goes for Mina. While the girls were having fun, Haruto was getting surrounded by men in the men's bath, asking where he was from since they hadn't seen him around before. When you expected to see cute girls bathing in the hot spring, but you get men rizzing you up instead. At the Elmond Kingdom, Rogues was commended by his father, King Hills, for conquering the Shadow Dungeon. Rogues bowed down, claiming that it was all thanks to the heroes whose strengths must already rank among the top on the continent. Right, they must reward the 3 heroes of the Shadow Raid team, Yohei, Akamoto, and Megumi. Now they'll see what becomes of the calamity. King Hills sighed. If they keep the heroes here without knowing the nature of the calamity, the other nations may criticize them for building up military force. Rogues assured him not to worry, as he had already investigated it. The calamity this time is the demon ogre, as the seal from 200 years ago is beginning to unravel. His revelation earned a shocked gasp from the other nobles. King Hills questioned whether this was true, and Rogues replied affirmatively. However, the location of the demon ogre's seal should be unknown since the heroes at the time died fighting it. Rogues assured him as they already had a solid lead. That's great, but King Hills reminded him to be cautious because he's facing a calamity, especially since he tends to be too hasty. Rogues respectfully agreed, but he was already criticizing his father for being overly timid in his mind. Then, he turned around to immediately prepare their forces and head to subjugate the demon ogre. But before he could take another step, his father stopped him, surprised that he intended to break the seal and subjugate it. That can't be. He must only reinforce it. Rogues clicked his tongue and explained that they couldn't summon heroes so frequently. That's why they must strike while they still have the strength. King Hills was about to protest when Rogues cut him off, saying, resealing it is impossible in the first place. To reseal the calamity, they need the power of a holy attribute hero, but Megumi's currently not in a state where she can use her powers. When King Hills asked for the reason, Rogues urged Philia to answer. As they know, the Shadow Raid team consisted of 80 members including heroes and the castle's elites. Of those, only 55 returned. Megumi had the power of healing, so she felt responsible for the deaths of the team members, and it affected her both physically and mentally. That made King Hills sigh. Heroes sure are delicate. At that moment, a person entered the throne room and explained that they probably came from a peaceful world, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's Vict, the first prince. King Hills was surprised to see him and asked if he was feeling well. Vict replied that he was indeed feeling well, so he thought of attending the meeting for a change. King Hills asked for his opinion on the demon ogre, and Vict also believed that they should only reinforce the seal. Rogues asked why, but instead of answering, Vict glanced at him like he knew something he shouldn't before dropping a bombshell, stating that the demon ogre is sealed in paradise. King Hills exclaimed in shock and asked Rogues if that was true, to which he replied that it was. The nobles erupted in chaos because paradise was near the capital and the commercial city of Kask. Meanwhile, Rogues asked Vict how he knew about that, and the latter just claimed that since Rogues had been busy with politics, he thought he'd at least gather information on the calamity. Vict knows that Rogues admire the previous hero, Russell, but today's heroes are not the same as he was. It's already been 50 years since his death. He wiped out the demon race, the kin of the demon ogre, resealed the evil dragon. Basically, his achievements were immeasurable. Indeed, he might have been able to defeat the demon ogre, but does he really think today's heroes could do the same? Vic's words made Rogues quietly clench his fist in anger. King Hills was disappointed that the holy-type hero, Megumi, is bedridden. Vict asked if he could take responsibility for her. After all, he spent more time bedridden than anyone else, so he might be able to help her recover. Philia, as well as the knights, were relieved to hear that. Unbeknownst to these people, Rogues was gritting his teeth in anger that his cowardly brother, who gave up his claim to the throne over some illness, is now showing up. He had a glare as he watched the nobles and Philia smile at Vict. He needs power to prove himself, so he had no choice but to go to paradise. At the same time, Haruto was sitting by the window while Karen and Mina slept on the bed. Tomorrow, they're heading for paradise. The next day, the three arrived at the entrance to paradise and were fascinated to see a lot of people and stalls. It looks just like a festival ground. Lisa recognized and greeted them. They turned to her and Haruto asked what she was doing there. Obviously, working. Paradise brings all kinds of business opportunities. It's not just adventurers. Tons of tourists come just to watch. So she's running a souvenir shop for them. Then, she asked if they wanted to buy something as well, showing a figurine of Megumi, Akamoto, and Yohei. The three were surprised to see familiar faces, but Lisa mistook them as fans and urged them to buy one. Guess her sales talk didn't work as they ran away as fast as they could. When they reached the dungeon entrance, they witnessed a party of adventurers throwing a fit because the guard would not let them pass since they were too weak. The guard advised them to raise their guild rank and try again. The party had no choice, and just angrily stomped away. Mina thought this was bad. They only just joined the guild, so they haven't ranked up either. Haruto was prepared for cases like that, and had Rai and the others take separate routes into paradise. If it comes down to it, they'll do the same. They were intimated the moment they reached the guard, who asked for their guild cards. They obediently handed them with anxious faces, and unlike their expectation, the guard just let them in. Haruto was confused and asked about that whole thing about their rank. The guard explained that rank was just one of the many indicators, and there's no reason to turn away clearly capable adventurers. However, they should be careful, because no adventurer who reached the deepest part of paradise has ever come back. Once they were inside, Haruto immediately noticed the malice that the dungeon was emitting, and urged them to hurry as they still needed to retrieve the magical tool weakening the demon's seal while taming the monsters in paradise. Meanwhile, Akamoto, who also entered paradise with Yohei and Rogues, asked what was the rush and why Rogues brought them to a place like this. The victory parade in Cask isn't for a few more days, and the other heroes aren't even here. Rogues bet it felt too easy for them, even though the Shadow Dungeon was uncharted. The two could not believe he'd say that when they lost so many lives in that dungeon. Rogues didn't feel sorry at all, and just claimed that the ones who died were dead weight. This time, they're going with a small elite team and conquer paradise, a top-level difficulty dungeon. And since it's just one floor, it won't take long to clear. It's the perfect way to spread their heroic name. Yohei protested, questioning why the hell do they have to take on another high-level dungeon now when clearing the Shadow Dungeon already made them famous enough. Rogues gritted his teeth, claiming that a true hero doesn't settle for that. Actually, there's a calamity sealed inside paradise. If they defeat the calamity, they can return to their original world. Isn't that what they want? Akamoto thought they should prepare more carefully and strengthen the other heroes first if it's a calamity. He did have a point, but Rogues want to make them legends. There are 27 heroes this time. If all of them work together to defeat the calamity, only the group name heroes will be remembered, and he can't accept that. Only the true heroes deserve to go down in history, and they have what it takes. Akamoto was about to protest, but Rogues cut him off to inform them that Haruto and the others are in paradise, shocking the two. Apparently, a royal guard sent to scout Cask reported seeing them, which means they cleared the royal tomb. A truly shocking feat. Yohei could not believe that they cleared the royal tomb, with a difficulty rated 7, which is even harder than the Shadow Dungeon, the one they cleared. More importantly, they're done for if Haruto and the others realize they were set up and everyone finds out, though they probably already know. That's why they didn't return to the capital and came here instead to seize the calamity's power to themselves. Rogues believed that they must be planning revenge on the kingdom with that power. Akamoto thought that there's no way they'd go that far, but before he could finish his sentence, Rogues grabbed them and shouted that they had to stop Haruto and the others before their vengeance brought ruin to the kingdom. Rogue's eyes glowed, as if hypnotizing the two, who agreed with him like puppets. He smirked with satisfaction and decided to go. However, they bumped into Rai and the others while walking through the forest. A fight erupted, causing an explosion that Haruto and the others noticed from afar. As Haruto wondered what was going on, Lulu came just in time to inform him of the situation. Mina asked him what was wrong, and Haruto explained that it looks like Rai and the others are fighting enemies, so they should back them up. However, before they could take another step, Rogues' royal guards stopped them and blocked their way. The captain pressed on his ear, and a small magic circle appeared, most probably a spell for communication, and informed Rogues that they'd found Haruto's party. Rogues ordered him to hold them there as planned because things will get messy if the Tamer and his familiars regroup. Haruto angrily shouted Rogues' name when he heard his voice, and the royal guard was nice enough to inform him that Yohei and Akamoto were with him, I guess. They're about to slay the calamity, so they asked him not to interfere. More people appeared and surrounded them. They were like mice backed in a corner now. It's not just the royal guards. There were also adventurers. Karen noticed something off about them, but they had no more time to discuss it. Mina urged Haruto to go ahead and they'll be sure to hold them off here. Karen agreed. After all, he's worried about Rai and the others, isn't he? Haruto was about to protest, but Mina cut him off, assuring him that they'll be fine, so he could count on them. They've got this. Touched by their words, Haruto quickly dashed up to leave. The captain was about to attack them with his spear when Mina shot the ground he was standing on with magic to stop him from doing so. A chaotic fight would be trouble, so they'll just crush them here. The captain warned them not to get cocky. Sure, they've grown insanely powerful, but numbers always win. And as if on cue, more enemies came out from above the trees. These guys are capable of exploring even the deeper parts of paradise, and the royal guards are even stronger than that. Mina doesn't stand a chance with dead weight dragging her down. Karen immediately felt bad after the captain's words that seemed to be targeting her, but Mina held her close and boasted that the potions Karen brew were top class and maximizes their power. She casted Fire Scale, Titan Worm, scaring the royal guards off. She told him it was awesome, didn't she? Mina raised her hand and dropped it, commanding the fire to engulf the enemies, who collapsed within a second. That was a pretty useless army. Now then, they should go back to Haruto. She called forth for the Fire Scale, Pegasus Worm, and wrote it to reach Haruto faster. Meanwhile, Haruto arrived at where his familiars were fighting Rogues and the others. He found some of them collapsed on the ground, while Rai and Rito immediately came to him, as if to tattle on what happened. Seeing his injured familiars angered Haruto. He asked if they did it, and hearing Yohei's confused expression, he repeated his question, shouting angrily this time. Yohei smirked, asking if he was blind and stupid because who else but them could have done it. Akamoto fixed his glasses and told them to jump back. The moment they did, a fire arrow shot down to where they were standing earlier. It was an attack from Mina, who landed beside Haruto, along with Karen. She glared after seeing the state of her fellow familiars and asked if they're prepared for the consequences of their actions. Just that simple question pushed the main character wannabe's buttons, causing him to shout and warn them not to get cocky. He lunged forward with his sword, claiming that he'll kill all of them this time. Haruto scowled and activated his full power. With that, Rito jumped and attacked Yohei, who stood no chance. The two at the back couldn't believe what they just witnessed. Does that mean even layering this many defensive spells isn't enough? At that moment, Rai attacked Akamoto with lightning, and he collapsed in a second, leaving Rogues alone. It seems like even if Akamoto can predict it with future sight, the attacks are so fast that he can't avoid them. Additionally, Rogues noticed that the power of the familiars are on a completely different level than before. Is it thanks to the Tamer being nearby? No, that's not the case. He's a familiar for Rai too. That's why there's hesitation to fight. Rogues just laughed, stomping on one of the collapsed familiars' heads. He was mocking Rito for sacrificing one of his own kind. Guess he's just a beast after all. Haruto pointed out that Rogues seemed to be quite relaxed, but instead of responding to him, Rogues asked Karen for her thoughts. Yohei and Akamoto weren't weak. Rather, they're among the most powerful of the past heroes, but they were easily slayed by familiars. He can tell that the two of them, Mina and Haruto, possess something beyond that even if they avoid it. But what about her? He doesn't feel any great power from her, so she obviously didn't belong there. Mina questioned what the hell he was even saying, and countered that Karen is boosting their power with potions. If that's the case, then she could just hand over the potion and stay behind. In the first place, do they even need potions? They're strong. So, what were they using potions for? Rogues held out his hand, and once again, his eyes glowed, as if to hypnotize Karen to come over to him, claiming that her place isn't there. The two were baffled to see Karen walking down on her own, and tried to stop her from going. However, Rogues threatened them not to move as she is now under his control. If he commands it, he can even make her die. Since the two seemed to be unable to believe his skill, he proved it by making Karen spin around and bark, which she did without any hesitation. Rogues laughed and told them to sit tight and behave until he gathers enough magic to completely kill through. Haruto gritted his teeth, wondering what to do now. If it's Rai's speed, can it neutralize him before Rogues give the command? No. Rai's sword would be useless if its identity were known, so they had to nullify the skill itself. But how? Mina glanced at Haruto and Rogues before telling him to tame Karen. Rogues' skill was unknown, but she dodged his skill once back when he asked her to come to his room. She knows instinctively that Tame can nullify his skill. That's why he should tame Karen. However, Haruto hesitated. He was afraid that by taming Karen, his relationship with her might change, like Mina. Just then, Mina smacked his back to snap him out of his thinking and begged him to do it as there was no time to hesitate. She assured him that it will be okay and that what's important won't change. Haruto finally walked down, following Karen. Rogues questioned if he was out of his mind and warned him not to move. However, Haruto had already reached Karen and used his skill to tame her. Thinking that nothing happened, Rogues laughed maniacally. He knew it. If he had put her under his control earlier, taming will not have worked. Then, he ordered Haruto to get his hands off Karen. Just then, Karen's hand twitched and she raised her head, saying she didn't want to. Rogues was taken aback after seeing that Karen had returned back to normal, while Haruto and Mina were relieved to know that their plan worked. Rogues could not believe it. That should be impossible. Doesn't control-type skills give priority to whoever cast it first? Haruto asked what his skill was, but Rogues just scoffed, refusing to answer. However, his skill was soon revealed by Karen. It's one-person mind control. A mind control skill. If it wasn't already obvious by its name. She chuckled, pulling out a potion. Seems like he'd been trying to recreate the one Rai made. She just used her level 1 appraisal skill. The materials were all there, and it was all completed. He was unsure if it'd work with yesterday's ingredients. Seems like he was just unsure whether it would actually succeed. Now, the worries are exposed. Haruto finally gets it. That strange potion seemed to be manipulating people's minds. What a broken cheat skill. Mina should have gone easier on them, but it doesn't seem to be all powerful either. To manipulate someone, Rogues would need to grasp a crack in their heart. Karen apologized as she seemed to have been rattled by Rogue's words, since it's true that she's clearly lacking in power compared to others. Mina questioned what she was saying and claimed that they needed her, to which Karen happily agreed with. She feels powered up from Tame, and from now on, she can be a valuable asset. That's not what Mina meant though. Haruto interjected into their conversation and apologized. They're right. If he doesn't say it, it won't get through. Karen said she'd stay with him, but he never really reciprocated. This time, he'll say it. That it's fun being with her, so he'd like it if she'd stay by his side forever. Karen blushed, turning around and questioning what he was saying. She can't stay by his side forever. She has her own private life too, you know. Haruto clarified that it was just a figure of speech, but his words didn't get through Karen, who couldn't stop blushing. He looked so cool. Is this also an effect of Tame? Yeah, it's definitely an effect. Fake it till you make it, I guess. Have they forgotten about Rogues already? Because that mother trucker has been gathering enough magic power to kill them, and finally unleashed it. But I guess I worried for nothing because Haruto just slashed the attack into two like it's nothing. Rogues froze before dropping to his knees. He can't believe that he lost, and his full power attack was so easily deflected. The difference in power was too great. He needs more power. Haruto approached Rogues, claiming that it's over. When suddenly, a black figure appeared in between them. They all froze in shock, and also because of the oppressive aura it was emitting. Could it be? This guy is a demon? It opened its mouth and let out a wave of darkness that enveloped the whole forest, and even outside, where the adventurers and tourists were. They screamed in fear, but before they could run away, the darkness entered their body, and just like that, they turned into mindless puppets whose only goal was to kill the hero. When Haruto opened his eyes, the demon had already vanished. Karen wondered what that was just now, and a voice explained that that was the miasma of the demon lord leaking from the seal, and that gave them power. It was Rogues, along with Yohei and Akimoto, who powered up thanks to the demon's power, in order to get rid of them. This was amazing. Yohei could feel power overflowing within him. With this, they won't lose to familiars anymore. Haruto questioned if they were going to obey the Demon Lord. Weren't they here to defeat the Demon Lord as well? That's right, but it doesn't matter anymore. Rogues raised his hand, making the others fly up in the sky, leaving him and Haruto alone. The urge burning in him is only one thing, to kill them all. That's all he wants. Karen and Akimoto landed in the forest, away from the others. Akimoto fixed his glasses. Unlike Yohei, he's not into picking on the weak, but right now he feels like doing it. Karen smirked. Maybe it was because he was asleep that he didn't know, but she's gotten stronger with Tame too. She unleashed her magic, Ice Arrow, and aimed for Akimoto. At the same time, in another part of the forest, Mina looked around, thinking that she had to quickly regroup with everyone. While Yohei lunged forward to attack her, she told him to get out of her way and unleashed a fire scale, Titan Worm, to trap Yohei. However, he slashed her magic with his sword. Meanwhile, Akimoto grabbed the arrows Karen threw at him. They didn't know how strong they got with Tame, but the Demon Lord's power is beyond that. Karen smirked and raised her hand. She embedded a synthesis magic circle into the fired ice arrow in advance. With its effect, it fuses the mana in the air and the ice arrow through synthesis and transforms it into a new magic. the compound version, Ice Lekion. However, Akamoto blew it up as if foreseeing this already happening. The way to counter Foresight is an overwhelming attack that's too fast to react to even if foreseen. Karen tried to make that possible with a two-layered barrage, but this level isn't enough to stop him. Karen gritted her teeth and fired off a bunch of spells: Ice Bow, Ice Cannon, Ice Arrow, and Ice Tank. But Akamoto blocked them all and shouted that it was useless. As long as Foresight is paired with his physical strength, no attack is impossible to dodge. She should just give up. However, his sentence was cut off when he exclaimed in confusion, after noticing that the barrage was just a setup and there was something else behind him. As expected of Foresight, he caught on quickly. But it's too late. Karen activated Synthesis Conversion, Ice Lekion Shirabat Carnival. If pushing doesn't work, then all she had to do was push more. This was an ultra-hyper-saturated barrage made possible by mana enhanced through Tame and Synthesis. Akamoto shouted in disbelief, but Karen had already turned around to leave, telling him to just give up. Didn't he foresee this future as well? Karen walked away, leaving Akamoto trapped inside a rabbit-like ice structure. Meanwhile, Mina seemed to be getting pushed back in her battle with Yohei. Despite her fire scale, Dragon Worm, Yohei was able to reach her with his sword, which she quickly blocked with fire. Yohei laughed, claiming that she was too slow, when Mina suddenly vanished and reappeared above him with fire scale. Pegasus War 2. However, Yohei looked up, smirking as he blocked her attack. He parried it with his sword, laughing at how weak she was. They landed back on the ground with Yohei mocking her magic. Giants have strength but lack defense, dragons have defense but lack speed, and horses have speed but lack power. It must be tough being a small fry. She had to keep switching tricks just to raise her specs and keep up. Mina ignored his mocking and voiced her speculation. The fact that they're using them all to stall their party means the Demon Lord isn't ready to revive yet. Isn't that right? Yohei was about to speak when Mina punched him. Then she smirked. That means they don't have to hold back mana for the Demon Lord anymore. Yohei gritted his teeth and parried the attacks Mina sent his way with his sword. So what if she raised her power? A horse is still a horse. She still didn't have enough defense. That's right. That's why she'll go all in. She changed into the five-tailed Trinity form, making Yohei step back and question why he was still losing even though he got stronger with the Demon Lord's power. The reason is obvious. It's because she's the strongest familiar. She shot Yohei with an even stronger fire, knocking him out. Back at Rogues and Haruto, Rogues cursed in frustration at how much difference they had even with the Demon Lord's power. He shouted in anger and launched countless attacks that Haruto deflected with no problem. This time, they'll end it. Rogues smirked and people suddenly emerged from the smoke to grab onto Haruto. They were adventurers from paradise. It seems they were also affected by the Demon Lord's miasma. He paused when he recognized Lisa. Then he turned to Rogues, who mockingly asked if it was someone he knew. As he guessed, these people have been turned feral by the Demon Lord's miasma, and through mind domination, they've been ordered to kill him. It's the same for the hundreds of humans in and around paradise. So, does he want to also tame and save them? But he doubts Haruto alone could handle that many. Rogues' smile faltered when Haruto asked if he forgot his words from earlier and restrained the adventurers with the help of his familiars, Rai and Rito. Just like he said, Haruto's a tamer, meaning he's not alone. Yeah, right, he's gonna Sung Jinwoo your ass. Rogues scoffed. So what if hundreds have been mind-controlled? Just two familiars aren't gonna cut it. Haruto cut him off, claiming that he had hundreds of tamed familiars in the royal tomb, paradise, and its surroundings. He heard his talk and ordered his familiars to neutralize the people without hurting them. Luckily, those people aren't as strong as them, so it shouldn't be hard for his familiars. Haruto jumped up, shouting that this was the end. Rogues tried to fight back, however, Haruto had already landed a kick on him. Their party returned to the royal palace to turn Rogues, Yohei, and Akamoto in. King Hills questioned if Rogues had anything to say regarding this incident, to which he replied that he did. He came up with a lousy excuse that he only tried to stop Haruto's plot to seize the power of the Calamity by slaying the Calamity himself, and activated his mind control skill. However, Karen smirked and claimed that it was useless because everyone present has developed resistance to his mind control skill through alchemical drugs. King Hills apologized to them about his foolish son causing them trouble, but Haruto assured him that it was fine since they've achieved their goal anyway, which is to retrieve the magical artifact that was weakening the Calamity's seal and taming the monsters that had gathered in paradise. King Hills was shocked to hear about that, so Haruto explained that it was originally set up to lure monsters and make them absorb the Calamity's magic, but instead, the Calamity was stealing their magic and regaining strength to break its seal, which explains the outflow of miasma. Vict thanked Haruto for resolving that as well. Thanks to his quick intervention, those affected by the miasma recovered without lasting effects. Seeing Haruto's startled expression and stuttering, Vict apologized and properly introduced himself as Rogues' older brother. They were confused. Wasn't Rogues the first prince? Rogues explained that his elder brother Vict renounced his claim to the throne due to illness. Thus he became the first prince in his place. As if understanding what Rogues was enunciating, Vict frowned and called his name softly, but Rogues just looked away. Haruto finally understood why Rogues was desperate to slay the calamity. He wanted to prove he wasn't just a replacement for his brother. Yohei clicked his tongue in anger. If Rogues hated his brother so much, he could have just used mind control on him, just like he tried with them. Akimoto agreed, but Karen claimed that wouldn't have worked because Victa's skill nullifies the abilities of others. Basically, he's Asta. Vict himself could not believe it, and Philia, who was beside him, asked to confirm if that was real because her appraisal didn't show anything. Karen explained that it likely nullified even Philia's appraisal. Meanwhile, her appraisal is a replica she created through alchemy, so that's probably why it worked on him. King Hill sighed in relief. He thought both his sons were powerless, but it turns out they both have powerful skills. Then, he asked Rogues what he knew of Vict's skills, to which Rogues answered that he had a suspicion. King Hills realized something and questioned whether he tried to use mind control on Vict. Seeing him nod his head, King Hills asked if he tried it on him and Philia as well, to which he agreed. However, it didn't work on the king, not due to skill-based immunity, but rather his cautious, timid personality. Mind control only works if the target has a gap in their heart. As for Philia, he only ordered her not to use appraisal on him as he couldn't risk letting others know about mind control. Yohei clicked his tongue. He knew something was off. There's no way a scumbag like Rogues would be liked by his sister. Akimoto agreed, it was the skill after all. Rogues shouted, denying their accusations. He only ordered Philia not to use appraisal on him, and her feelings for him were genuine. He turned to her in desperation, but she hid behind Vict, clearly afraid. Rogues dropped his head in defeat. At least, it should have been genuine. He could feel Haruto's stare and told him not to pity him. One day, he'll also understand. That sinking feeling when he no longer knows whether someone's affection is real or just the result of his skill. It should have been just a harmless bit of control. He never used mind control to make anyone like him. Their feelings might be real, but what if they weren't? Eventually, he stopped seeing value in bonds or emotions that a single skill can alter. He hopes that Haruto never becomes like that. After that, Rogues have been secretly placed under house arrest, since the royal family can't let the public know that the first prince conspired with a hero to break the calamity's seal. Yohei, Akimoto, and the royal guard members have been placed under the same condition until they determine whether they acted on their own will or under mind control. Vict asked Haruto where he learned that the calamity was sealed in paradise, since even he had to dig through the royal library's restricted books to find out. Haruto replied that Mephiles, the legendary holy dragon, told them she was sealed at the deepest part of the royal family's tomb, apparently mistaken for an evil dragon. Vict couldn't believe it, but now that he thought about it, that made sense, as that would also explain how Haruto knew about the artifact. Could it be that he tamed Mephiles too? He indeed tamed him, though it's more like she's lending them her strength. In return, they agreed to help break Mephiles' seal. That's why they went to paradise. If he tames powerful monsters and grows stronger, she should also gain the strength to break her seal. Philia suggested that her brother, Vict, nullify the seal. Also, Lord Balth was researching how to undo Tame, so couldn't Vict's skill help with that too? However, Mina, Karen, and even Rai refused to do that. They made excuses like Haruto's skill was passive, so lifting effects from others isn't really his thing, and if they undo the Tame, they'll lose a lot of power, which could turn into a problem. When they left, they asked Haruto if he was sure about this. He even turned down the offer to stay at the castle. After all, he had his monsters to think about. Staying at the castle would have given Mina and Karen a better life, yet they came with him. Haruto couldn't stop thinking about Rogues' words earlier, and Mina noticed that. So, she claimed that it'd just be awkward to go back to the castle now, and this is her decision. Why would he even take Rogue's words so seriously? Karen agreed. She's been with him even before he tamed her, remember? That's right, but Mina was different, and he believes she'd do just fine at the castle. So why was she following him? She stepped closer. Isn't it obvious? It's because she likes him, that's all. Haruto blushed, and Mina smirked, clarifying that she liked this lifestyle. Then she turned away, and teasingly asked what was wrong since his face was red. Haruto exclaimed when he realized she was teasing him. Mina laughed, and he thought he could control others. How arrogant. Haruto wondered if Mina was worrying about him, but Karen denied. She thinks Mina just chickened out halfway through, making Mina blush in embarrassment. Haruto doesn't understand people's hearts, but he does know one thing. It's that he loved this life too. I mean, who wouldn't? You've got 2 cute girls and a bunch of pets. 1 week after the battle with Rogues, they returned to paradise with Philia. They began clearing the land with the help of Mina's magic and her just casually setting the forest on fire, I guess. She's really fired up for land development of AE territory, the land Haruto became the lord of. 2 days ago, Haruto's party was summoned back to the royal palace. He congratulated Vict on his return as the first prince, to which Vict replied with gratitude. It's all thanks to Karen's concoction, which enabled him to stay active longer. It is quite the medicine, but a new problem has arisen with his return, and that's actually why he called him here. The root lies in Rogues' downfall. Neither his fall nor the reason behind it has been made public, but rumors spread. It's practically an open secret now among the upper ranks of the kingdom. Then comes his return as first prince, who's weak in health and not as authoritative as Rogues. It seems like some nobles have begun to act suspiciously, especially Duke Ayard, his uncle, who is openly showing hostility. Being the prince's uncle meant he's the king's brother, so he's also royalty. Right, not only the duke himself, but even his son has a claim to the throne. His name is Lois. He's exceptionally talented and well-liked, a flawless individual. In some ways, more of a threat than Duke Ayard himself. Frankly, if it weren't for his uncle's involvement, Vict would have no problem yielding the throne. But the situation isn't that simple, and it wouldn't send the right message. Mina questioned if what he's asking is for them to take care of his uncle or something, but Vict denied it and opened up a map. His uncle's territory borders the forest with the Paradise Dungeon. Haruto stationed his familiars in that forest, right? That's right. There's a lot of them, and that was the best spot. They even got permission from the town of Kask and the guild. Is that still not good enough? Vict explained that even with permission, it's an area frequented by adventurers, so accidents could happen. Therefore, he wants to entrust that land to Haruto as his own territory, and develop the forest as a lord and build a town. Of course, they'll fully support him. Haruto's eyes narrowed on Vict as he asked if he wanted them to act as watchdogs over the Ayard territory. Vic didn't disagree, and even added that he'd also like them to be a military asset in case of emergency. Haruto wondered if he really thought he'd just agree just like that, but Vic just smiled, claiming that it'd be unfair not to say so. And he says he's not authoritative. It's hard to refuse when he's this upfront. Haruto asked the two about what to do, and their answer was always the same. They're familiars, so they'll follow his lead no matter what. He ended up agreeing to it. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, you know? Soon, a bald spot was formed in the forest thanks to Mina's magic. Karen noticed Haruto's gloomy expression and asked what was wrong. Well, he was just wondering if it was really okay to accept this lord thing. It just feels like they're being used for political gain. Karen assured him that there's no way the kingdom will just toss him aside since they even sent Philia, a princess, to support him. Plus, letting the familiars live in their own land is more reassuring for him too, right? Haruto smiled in agreement, looking fondly at his familiars. Their conversation was interrupted when someone exclaimed in amazement. It was a man with a scar on his face, carrying an axe. He brought in some strong guys to help with clearing the forest, but it seems like they weren't needed. The power of a hero is truly incredible. Philia called for Haruto and introduced him to architect Duran and his craftsman team support from the capital. The men greeted them like soldiers, and Haruto just bowed in return. Duran laughed, praising him for being such a humble lord. Then, Philia urged them to begin working on giving Haruto a more lord-like demeanor. Duran asked if the trees can be processed into building materials, but Mina replied that there was no way it could. Well, that's fine. Just the fact that they chopped it down helps. He then turned to Haruto to say that they'd like to store the cut wood somewhere from now on, so Haruto gave them his permission to use an empty lot over there as storage. After getting his permission, Darin and the others went to chop off the trees and move them to the empty lot. Haruto and his familiars carried some chopped wood and offered some help. Darin and his team watched them in a daze before he turned to Philia and asked if they even needed them. Philia just smiled, responding that construction still needs real specialists. Just then, one of his members exclaimed after getting a cut deep on his arm. Duran approached him and advised him to go to Kask and have a doctor stitch it when Karen appeared behind and handed them a recovery potion. It's homemade, but still, she insisted that they take it. The member poured the potion on his wound and they were shocked when it magically healed. Even commercial ones barely heal scrapes. She's amazing. Darin had heard that the Lord Haruto commands tons of monsters like a badass, but these girls are a pair of baddies too. Darin addressed them as Haruto's wives, which made Karen freeze, along with Haruto and Mina, who came running when they heard a scream. Mina blushed, and Haruto tried to explain that it isn't like that. Well, he is a noble lord, so polygamy is allowed. Either way, they're both considered wives externally. Karen asked who would be the official wife, making Haruto and Mina's head turn to her in confusion. Karen waved her hand and claimed that she was just kidding, and that she's fine being the third or second wife. Mina turned to Haruto with an angry expression and questioned whether he was planning on adding more. Haruto backed away, repeatedly denying and explaining that Karen was just saying stuff on her own. He looked away in discomfort before running away, claiming that the other support group from the capital should be arriving soon, so they should go greet them. Once they arrived, Philia introduced Vizit the farmer, who is quite scary. Why is he looking at us like that? And the other is Line, a court painter. Vizit looked around in amazement. It looked like nature in Ayai territory was untouched. Meanwhile, Line promised to make sure to capture their heroic efforts properly. Haruto shook their hands and welcomed them to his territory. First, they'll start by evaluating soil suitable for farming. It's so untouched, so plowing, it might be tough. Mina offered help, along with the monsters. As for soil analysis, Karen and Philia could use their appraisal skills. As thanks, Visit handed Karen a rare herb he had gathered. He was sure that she'll make better use of it through synthesis. Alright, they should go all in on this land development. Haruto's familiars helped with moving the chopped woods, and Mina helped with plowing the soil. Meanwhile, Rito, along with his pack and Lulu, surrounded Lane, who painted them. Philia was pleasantly surprised with this incredible development speed, and Haruto claimed that it was all thanks to them since they've been so amazing. Still, she asked if Haruto was sure about this. She didn't mean asking the castle for help, but their classmates instead. She brought it up at the castle before as well, but none of the ones who badmouthed him are among them. She just thought that working together on the territory could mend even old grudges. Haruto assured her that it was fine. Even without rogues, it's not easy for everyone to accept him. Someone who can tame not just monsters, but also humans. Neither he nor Karen had any friends in class anyway, so they both had no regrets. But he wasn't sure about Mina. When they talked about it in the castle, he asked Mina if she was okay with it since she had a friend in class. Did they mean Megumi? She assured them that it's okay. She's worried since she heard she's been shutting herself in for various reasons, but Megumi's strong. She'll surely bounce back. And it seems the castle is looking after her as well. If anything, her suddenly showing up when they think she's dead would just cause more confusion. That's why it's okay. Back at the castle, Megumi was curled up on the floor, hugging her legs. She had dark bags and life drained out of her eyes. She recalled the time they encountered a formidable boss, an event that resulted in heavy casualties and countless injuries. She had tried her absolute best to heal a knight who was barely clinging to life with a deep wound, but other soldiers approached her, insisting that many more were waiting for her aid. However, since nearly everyone suffered from similar critical trauma, they had to move from one person to the next in a grim cycle. Carrying such a heavy burden made her heart ache with guilt. At present, a companion tried to comfort her by explaining that the soldiers' deaths were not her responsibility. On the contrary, many survived solely because she was there. Everyone felt grateful, noting that they were saved because she never surrendered, and treated them until the very end. He suggested she meet with the other heroes, believing that interacting with those close to her would lift her spirits. Megumi followed this advice and headed outside. There she informed the group that she was doing better, and noticed that Yohei and Akimoto were absent. Harada explained that those two were currently conquering a level 8 dungeon, and had been on that expedition for a long time. Harada apologized for leaving the dungeon conquest to Megumi, and promised to provide as much support as possible from the castle. Megumi observed that the class atmosphere felt strange. Harada was acting pushy, even though they had barely spoken before. If she remembered correctly, Harada was not part of her and Yohei's combat team. She belonged to the lifestyle team staying at the castle. Come to think of it, Yohei always disliked Harada, finding her annoying and unattractive. However, excluding all of them, rogues believed Harada likely possessed the highest combat ability among the heroes. She had great athletic talent and battle-oriented skills, yet she lacked the courage to face unknown enemies in an unfamiliar world. Meanwhile, after learning there was little to do in the Haruto territory, the princess asked Haruto to visit the town and recruit settlers. Mina wondered why this was necessary, believing that they and the monsters provided enough labor for development. Haruto pointed out that this was exactly the problem. Normally, the people who gather for development become the permanent residents, but in their case, the workforce was mostly monsters. At this rate, the land would become a depopulated area. If they waited until the territory was fully built to recruit, the town would only reflect their own narrow intentions. Incorporating the opinions of residents during the building process would create a more vibrant community. Furthermore, living in a deserted area surrounded only by monsters would make them look like demon lords rather than heroes. They decided to start recruiting in crowded areas, and managed to enlist Lisa, who planned to open a Koyute branch store there. Upon learning they were heroes building a new territory, Lisa's mother agreed to let her daughter go, believing Lisa was at an age where she needed to gain experience. She felt her daughter would be safe near the heroes. Regarding the shop, she mentioned she could always call her husband back if extra help was needed. He is an adventurer, and about half of their ingredients come from his travels. Hearing this, Haruto proposed asking the guild to advertise the recruitment as well. Lisa added that they needed merchants as residents, food suppliers, and guards to protect the trade. Since they were opening a restaurant, specialized expertise was also essential. After noting these suggestions, they went to the guild to post the notice. A few days later, word spread that they had obtained territory and that anyone could move there immediately. There was also plenty of work available for those helping with development. Seeing the commotion, Philia praised their popularity. Haruto questioned if this was truly okay, worrying they might be taking people away from the town. The princess assured him it was fine, as local residents were unlikely to leave. Most of those moving were people who had originally come to Cask for work due to the abnormal monster outbreaks and stayed for business or investigations. Many had been left jobless recently, and while Haruto felt it was his fault for taming the monsters, the princess denied this. While the monster population decreased, more lives were saved because of it. Regardless, since there would be some movement of residents, she suggested greeting the neighboring lords right away, noting she had already contacted them in advance. They arrived at a state where Count Lemon warmly welcomed them. He apologized to the princess for his late greetings, explaining he got carried away meeting the heroes. After an assistant whispered to him, she guided everyone to the reception room. As the count and the princess discussed the land and the harvest, Haruto observed that they spent a long time talking about topics unrelated to the main goal. He realized noble meetings were unique. As the princess had told him, they never start with the main topic immediately. Small talk is used to warm up the atmosphere, and jumping straight to business would be seen as unfriendly. However, since the main topic had been sent in advance, there was no need to be nervous. The count eventually turned to him, acknowledging his plan to develop the forest near Cask and offering any help needed. The princess briefed the count that the royal capital had prepared countermeasures in case too many people relocated. Lemon found this excellent and joked that he would live there himself if his position allowed. He offered to lend his attendants and a knight to assist with daily needs during the initial busy period. When Haruto asked if this was too much, the count affirmed it was for their education, wanting Haruto to use the young knights for training exercises. As the assistant left to make arrangements, the count revealed she was also a fan of the heroes and begged them to take her along. Her name was Sakuha, a highly talented newcomer and his adopted daughter. Lemon had adopted many orphans from his territory since he hadn't been blessed with many children of his own. The princess remarked to Haruto on Sakuha's beauty, adding that a union between them would establish an ideal relationship with Count Lemon. The count clarified that Sakuha wasn't the only one being sent, and told Haruto to take whoever caught his eye. Afterward, the rounds of greetings continued smoothly, and Haruto was glad everyone was friendly, attributing it to his own virtue. However, the final meeting would not be so easy, as it involved Duke Ayard. Mina advised him to pull himself together, warning that if anything went wrong she would blow the entire situation away. Haruto thought she was joking, but she was completely serious. Upon observing his territory, Haruto was stunned by the progress made in the few short days they had been away. Doran credited the rapid development to the monsters, noting that the goblins' strength and coordination were truly impressive. He wants to build houses for these goblins as well, but they say they don't need them. Mina instructed him to prioritize human houses because the monsters originally lived in the wild anyway. Doran agreed before climbing a ladder, mentioning that both construction and forest clearing were proceeding at an incredible pace, though a mountain of work still remained. Haruto smiled, pleased to see how well everyone had bonded with the monsters during his absence. After Rai excitedly jumped to greet him, several unfamiliar faces arrived, riding on Reito's kin. One man introduced himself as Rid, explaining that he and his comrades had arrived after seeing the guild's recruitment notice. They formally greeted Haruto as their lord. Haruto found it unusual for anyone else to ride Reito's kin, but Rid attributed it to being on the same wavelength, as they were beast folk. He explained that under Reito's orders they had been patrolling the perimeter and mapping the area using their keen sense of smell. Haruto thanked him but realized he didn't actually know who Reitsis was. Kirin reminded him that Reitsis was Philia's butler, whom the princess had appointed to oversee everything in their absence. Haruto simply nodded, realizing his mind had been so preoccupied with greeting the other lords that he must have missed that detail. Rid pointed toward the mansion where Reitsis was waiting to warmly welcome them back. The group was amazed by the building, which was splendid both inside and out. When Haruto asked if this was to be their living headquarters, Reitsis confirmed it, noting the inclusion of private quarters, offices, guest rooms, and administrative spaces. He had even included a dedicated resting area in the back for Haruto's three most important familiars. Reitsis then informed them that the princess was currently in the office, and asked if Haruto wished to see her or rest first. Haruto chose to visit the office briefly before deciding to rest until dinner. Meanwhile, Mina lay in bed, her thoughts consumed by Haruto. Recalling how calmly he had spoken in front of the other lords, she felt he had truly grown into the presence of a proper ruler. However, this growth made her feel as though he was drifting further away from her. While she possessed strong magic, she worried that others offered more practical support. Philia assisted with government affairs, Karen provided potions, and the soon-to-arrive Sakuha was experienced in managing a lord's personal needs. Mina feared that at this rate, Haruto would end up with someone else. She worried that as his reputation as both a lord and a hero grew, more women would flock to him. Knowing he was susceptible to pushy personalities, she feared he might simply be swept along by someone else's persistence. Though she believed him to be faithful, he was so dense that he hadn't noticed her feelings. Still seemingly convinced that their bond was merely a result of his taming skill, she fretted over the fact that heroes often attracted romance and that polygamy was accepted among the nobility in this world. The thought of him marrying 5 women at once made her shout in frustration, though she dismissed it as a ridiculous fantasy. Mina decided it was finally time to confess her feelings properly. However, she worried that if she did so now, he would just attribute her love to the taming effect. She considered asking Prince Victor to use his nullification power on the Tame, believing that with a bit of creative application, it might be possible to break the magical bond. Although losing the power of the Tame would be a significant disadvantage, she felt she could never truly be with Haruto if she had to rely on it as an excuse. Looking at herself and reflecting on their new living arrangements, she realized they would now have separate rooms and less time together as his duties as a lord increased. She felt a growing sense of urgency, wondering what she should do next. Haruto convened a meeting to propose building a more modest, practical house for them to live in. He admitted that the current mansion was so large he found it difficult to relax, and he also wanted to create a specialized living space for the other monsters, similar to the area they had constructed at the back of the estate. While Darin initially assumed Haruto wanted another grand mansion built on newly cleared land, Haruto explained that homes in his original world featured numerous conveniences that were currently missing. He tasked Darin with recreating as many of those features as possible, even though it would require new inventions and significant trial and error. Darin interrupted the explanation to ask if Haruto truly expected him to manufacture unknown technology from another world. Despite the seemingly impossible nature of the request, Darin found the challenge intriguing and accepted it. Haruto began drawing his requirements, explaining that modern houses utilized gas, electricity, running water, and communication lines sourced from central facilities. He noted that while electricity and communications typically came from above and gas and water from underground, they could likely replace most of these systems with magic. Darin expressed particular interest in developing gas, electricity, and air conditioning. Philia remarked that she had heard heroes often bring about great change, but she hadn't expected them to possess such advanced knowledge. Mina clarified that they hadn't actually invented these things themselves, and wondered why the heroes at the castle had never proposed similar ideas. Upon learning they hadn't, she realized it was likely because those heroes had servants handling every chore for them. When Kirin mentioned the appeal of a large public bath, Haruto ordered Rid to investigate whether there were any hot springs at the northern mine. If found, he planned to pipe the water directly to their home. At the princess's suggestion, he also instructed Rid to scout the mine for ore veins, though he warned him not to take unnecessary risks if dangerous monsters were present, advising Rid to call for backup if needed. Haruto was becoming increasingly proactive, knowing a clash with Duke Ayard was inevitable and wanting to bolster their resources. Furthermore, the prospect of a dream house with its own hot spring genuinely excited him. When Kirin questioned if they had enough money for such an ambitious project, the princess admitted that building a new residence, paying development costs, hiring staff, and funding a hot spring excavation would be expensive. Haruto suggested using their next official report as a justification to secure funding, and proposed returning to the royal tomb to retrieve the clear rewards they were unable to carry out during their last visit. Meanwhile, at the castle, Royce, the eldest son of Duke Ayard, politely greeted the heroes and expressed that it was an honor to meet them. Prince Victor informed the group that Royce was his cousin, as Duke Ayard is the king's younger brother. While several girls blushed at the sight of him, Haretta approached Royce and asked how she should address him. Royce told her that Royce was perfectly fine, and addressed her by her name, Riko. This led Harada to wonder if he was already smitten with her. Pleased that her display of kindness in front of Victikin had seemingly reached Royce as well, she silently apologized to Vict, deciding to shift her focus to Royce, as she preferred being the one who was pursued. Her expression darkened when Megumi arrived and asked Royce what he was doing there. Harada irritably snapped that she was about to ask the same thing. Observing the exchange, Royce noted that Megumi possessed valuable holy magic and was a key contributor to clearing the shadow. He found it strange that Harada occupied the leader's seat despite having no significant achievements, concluding that the values of people from another world were difficult to read. Nonetheless, he believed that by winning over the head of the group, he could control the entire body. Royce softly took Harada's hand, stating his goal was simply to meet the heroes. He remarked that while his achievements didn't match theirs, they were close in age, and he hoped they could become friends. He glanced at the prince, certain that Vict had noticed his true intention, but he knew Vict couldn't refuse contact with the heroes. He thought that it would be problematic if people thought the palace was monopolizing the heroes. Royce felt confident he could win them over as his father requested, yet he harbored doubts about whether they could truly stand against Harado and his group. Having caught only a glimpse of Harado's party at the estate, he had felt a tremendous power emanating from them. He clenched his fist, resolved to gather enough power to eventually defeat Harado and his allies. Mephiles observed how remarkably Haruto had changed, noting that he was steadily gaining strength. When she asked if he had successfully conquered the paradise, he confirmed that they had. Although they couldn't defeat the calamity itself, they had managed to recover the magic tool. Mephiles reassured him, stating that at his current level, he could likely handle even calamity-class monsters. Her attention then turned to Lulu, whom she identified as a survivor of the Rainbow Dragons. She explained that creatures like Lulu possess 7 colors, manipulate the power of the heavens, and bring about abundance, a divine beast capable of becoming an existence equal to Mephiles herself. Haruto began to wonder if it was truly appropriate to have such a being tamed, but Mephiles simply chuckled. She questioned why he was worrying about that now, considering he had already tamed her, a holy dragon. She noted, however, that dragons grow slowly, so Lulu would not achieve that level of power anytime soon. That said, Lulu's potential remains infinite. As Haruto grows stronger, the synergistic effect of the Tame will accelerate Lulu's development as well. When asked about the purpose of their visit, Haruto explained that he wished to retrieve more of the treasure. He shared that he was currently developing the forest near the paradise and transitioning into the role of a lord. Mephiles understood that he needed funding and reminded him that these riches belonged to him regardless. However, she cautioned him not to forget their primary goal. She was lending him her power so that he could gain the strength necessary to break her seal through the enhancement of the Tame. While his duties as a lord were acceptable, she insisted he must not neglect building his personal strength. Following their conversation, the princess was struck with awe at the mountain of treasure before them. She realized they could never exchange such a massive hoard for currency all at once. She proposed that the royal treasury store everything except for what they immediately required. Haruto agreed, acknowledging that their own territory lacked the capacity to store such an immense fortune. As the princess began appraising the items to determine their immediate utility, she informed him that this hoard might actually exceed the total value of the royal treasury itself. Haruto, however, seemed unconcerned. He was simply hungry. After moving the mountain of treasure into the royal treasury, the princess found herself wondering if even the royal budget could realistically cover the exchange for such a vast amount. During this time, she spotted Megumi standing alone. After greeting her, the princess asked if she was feeling better. While Megumi cheerfully insisted she was totally fine, the princess could see through the facade and pressed her to reveal what was truly troubling her. Meanwhile, Royce formally introduced himself to Haruto as the eldest son of the Duke Ayard family. He admitted he had heard much about Haruto's reputation and felt honored to meet him. While Haruto acknowledged that Royce was also quite popular, Royce humbly dismissed the praise, explaining that he was still inexperienced and that it would be presumptuous to compare himself to the heroes. However, despite having heard the rumors, Royce was still visibly surprised to see so many monsters actively working on development and construction. He smirked before asking if this was also achieved through the power of the Tame. While Karen whispered that being praised with such a genuine expression felt good, Mina clarified that the remark was actually sarcasm. Royce then asked if there were specific conditions required to turn a creature into a familiar, adding that a relationship built on such trust was unthinkable with standard warhorses or riding dragons. He questioned if there was a particular secret involved before and after using the Tame skill. Haruto silently wondered if this was a coordinated attempt at information gathering, yet he knew that ignoring the man would be seen as rude. Realizing that sharing the truth wouldn't change much, he explained that the relationship was one of mutual benefit. Monsters prioritize their own safety, and he guarantees that protection in exchange for taming them. He described it as a type of contract. Royce was amazed, as he had assumed taming was solely about forcing obedience, and he appeared deeply moved by how Haruto interacted with his familiars. Shifting the topic to the appearance of the heroes, Royce mentioned they must now consider the looming calamity, and asked if Haruto had any information. Haruto answered that he did not, and asked if the threat wasn't the evil spirit. Royce replied that no one truly knows, and that an investigation is required. He explained that the current uncertainty regarding the calamity is problematic. The kingdom is only permitted to maintain the powerful military force of the heroes because of the justification of facing this threat. With pressure mounting from both inside and outside the country, the Ayard family intended to mobilize all its resources to conduct a nationwide investigation, including the paradise, provided Haruto gave his permission. Sensing that such an investigation would allow a force hostile to the royal palace to move freely, Haruto insisted that Royce obtain permission from the palace first. Royce agreed and headed to the palace, where he informed the other heroes that the Ayard family wished to investigate the calamity for their sake. He assured them that once the threat was gone, they could all return to their original world, though a strange smirk remained hidden behind his promising words. When Haruto and his companions returned to their territory, they were amazed to find a modern, stylish house waiting for them. Darin informed them that while the interior was still a work in progress, he questioned if it was truly appropriate for a lord's residence to be situated in the middle of a forest. Haruto confirmed his choice, believing it allowed him to live near his familiars. Darin conceded, noting that being surrounded by such a fighting force made the home safer than any fortress. At that moment, the princess rushed toward them with a report that something terrible had happened in the Ayard territory. A short while earlier, as Royce returned to the Ayard estate to enter his father's office, a butler was reporting the same matter to the Duke. Duke Ayard ordered the butler to disregard the report and suggested merely telling the guild to conquer the plague nest. After the butler left, the Duke informed Royce that the plague nest had been activated. He brushed it off as a pathetic fuss, but Royce sensed the situation was grave. The Duke then changed the subject. Upon learning that Royce's efforts to appease the nobles were going smoothly, he praised his son. He noted that if they could also win over the heroes at the palace, they would have sufficient forces to overthrow the monarchy. Royce was about to disagree and mention Haruto's territory, but a butler suddenly rushed in. The scout sent to survey the plague nest had returned with news that massive amounts of miasma were overflowing from the site, leaving the surrounding villages devastated. Royce hurried to the palace to inform the heroes that the Ayard territory faced annihilation. He explained they had to immediately stop the outflow of miasma by entering the plague nest and eliminating the source. He bowed his head, begging the heroes to lend him their strength. In his mind, he was glad he had spent the past month building relationships with them, believing that with their help, even an unexplored dungeon would be manageable. However, he was met with a confusing silence. The heroes muttered among themselves, knowing from their books that the plague nest was a level 7 difficulty. Entering meant a dangerous fight with a potential boss. Prince Vict informed Royce that the heroes were far more reluctant to fight than expected. Their original world had not seen war for decades, making their aversion to injury abnormally strong. While Yohei usually led the charge, he was currently absent. Royce quickly pleaded with Harada to lend her strength, but she grabbed his hand, held it to her cheek, and apologized, stating she couldn't help. This declaration shocked Royce to the core. Harada explained she wasn't suited for combat, but offered to heal those who went to battle, though she specifically meant she would only do so for Royce. From a watchtower, Karen could see the abnormality even from a distance. Several days had passed since the miasma outflow began, and the situation was worsening daily. Observing the endless stream of refugees fleeing toward their territory and cask, Harada realized they had no prospects for resolving the crisis. He knew they would be fine if they simply accepted the anti-miasma medicine Karen had compounded, but Duke Ayard's pride prevented him from accepting charity from those he viewed as enemies. Karen suggested distributing the medicine without permission, but the princess warned that such an interference in internal affairs would give the Duke a pretext to invade and start a war. Knowing it was only a matter of time before the miasma reached his own land, Haruto realized they would eventually have to enter the Ayard territory and strike the plague nest themselves, leading to a direct clash with the Duke. Before that happens, Haruto wanted to do something, so he asked Philia to return to the capital. The princess agreed and suggested contacting her if anything happens. When Karen asks why so suddenly, Haruto replies that at this rate, war with the Ayard territory will break out. If Philia is here when that happens, as royalty, she could be held responsible for failing to stop the war. Suddenly, Rid rushed in to report that one of the heroes had entered the Ayard territory. It was Megumi. Though they knew Megumi could counter the miasma with her holy magic, they were deeply worried for her. Within the Ayard territory, Megumi was exhausted from healing the affected people. Royce, watching her, knew she was on the verge of collapse. While her healing held back the symptoms, it was only a temporary fix, and the other healers from the capital were becoming affected by the miasma themselves, increasing the burden on her. He urged her to rest, but she insisted she was fine. Royce realized she would continue until she collapsed, and that the only solution was to conquer the plague nest at its root. For that, he needs his father to allocate military forces. He hurried off, informing the knight that he would return to the mansion. At the castle, the heroes could already see the ominous miasma Royce had described. The king arrived and addressed them, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. He explained that he needed their help now more than ever, because of the high probability that this was indeed the calamity, noting that many details matched historical records of past disasters. The source was identified as the Plague Nest, an unexplored dungeon in Ayard territory. The king suspected that something within the depths had grown stronger, triggering the outbreak. Harada questioned if he was explicitly asking them to deal with that threat. When the king confirmed this, highlighting that their help as heroes was essential for an unexplored dungeon, Harada reacted with fury. Gritting her teeth, she pointed toward the source of the miasma and asked if he truly expected them to venture into such a place. She argued that they had been dragged into this world against their will and that forcing them into such danger was a violation of their rights. The room fell silent until the king bowed before her, apologizing for the circumstances of their summoning. Harada smirked and agreed with his apology, dismissively stating that he had caused them nothing but trouble. However, the king's tone shifted. He reminded her that he had apologized sufficiently. He explained that their exceptional hospitality and treatment as guests were signs of the kingdom's expectations that they would fulfill their roles. When she attempted to argue further, the king warned her that she could no longer claim ignorance. It had been made clear that they were summoned to fight the calamity, and their daily luxuries were provided with that specific expectation. He stated he would not force them to go, but if they refused, they would no longer be treated as guests of the crown, and the public would likely turn against them as well. Prince Victel then revealed a desperate alternative. They could seal off the Duke's territory with a barrier to contain the miasma. This meant abandoning everyone within the borders to their deaths. The king added that past miasma outbreaks had killed half of humanity. Therefore, sacrificing a single duchy was a small price to pay for the world's safety. The heroes were saddened by this prospect, and inquired about Megumi, who was still trapped there. The prince responded regretfully that they could not evacuate her without the public noticing and causing a panic. When the prince questioned if they were finally willing to fight to prevent Megumi from being sacrificed, Harada feigned concern. She apologized to Megumi as if she were already lost, and encouraged the others to pray for her instead. However, the other heroes remained silent until they collectively decided to go. They refused to abandon Megumi, and believed that as summoned heroes, they had the power to defeat the threat. Harada was frustrated by their resolve and warned them they might die, claiming she was only looking out for their safety. The heroes merely glanced at her, telling her they had heard enough. They could no longer believe that someone so heartless had ended up as their leader. As the group rushed outside to depart, Harada was left behind, clenching her fists in a rage, cursing them and looking like a pathetic, defeated leader. As the knights, heroes, and volunteers prepared to leave, Prince Vict instructed the princess to head to Haruto's territory. Once there, Royce begged Haruto's group to save his land, explaining that his father cared only for the throne. Royce stated he was willing to follow his father for the sake of the people, but since the Duke was abandoning them, he would no longer support him. He made a formal request for Haruto's intervention, promising to ensure it would not be treated as an illegal invasion of a lord's domain. Haruto questioned if Royce was certain about defying his father, and Royce confirmed his resolve. At that moment, the princess arrived and informed them that such extreme measures wouldn't be necessary. She reported that the Kingdom of Elmond had officially judged the incident as a potential calamity. The palace heroes were already on their way to the Plague Nest, but the kingdom wanted Haruto's group to go ahead and begin resolving the situation immediately. Haruto's team agreed and began preparing their allies. In the aftermath of this decision, Royce realized his solitary rebellion was no longer required. However, the princess clarified that to resolve the crisis swiftly, the kingdom planned to absorb House Ayard entirely. She added that if a lord truly cared for his people, total dissolution might not be necessary, hinting that Royce would become the new leader. When Royce asked about his father, the princess revealed the Duke would be forced to retire due to reports of actions unfit for a lord. After a moment of silent reflection regarding his father, Royce accepted the appointment. He turned to Haruto and insisted on joining the mission. Though Haruto warned him of the danger, Royce promised not to be a burden. Seeing the determination in his eyes, Haruto shook his hand, and together they set off to save the people of Ayard. Inside the Ayard estate, Duke Ayard ordered his knights to raise a protective barrier as the miasma began to seep into the grounds. Frustrated by his son's long absence, he was blindsided when a butler reported that Royce had returned, not alone, but with Haruto's army marching into their territory. The Duke slammed his desk in a rage, cursing Haruto and accusing the boy of using the chaos as a pretext to seize his lands. Resolved to crush the opposition head-on, he ordered his forces to deploy and smash what he considered to be conceited, fake heroes. As the Duke's mounted knights charged, Haruto remained calm, having already anticipated this resistance. Following their strategy, Mina ascended into the sky and manifested a series of complex magic circles. She unleashed a grand storm upon the advancing enemies, defeating the Duke's entire force in a single, overwhelming strike. While the princess questioned if the attack was perhaps too powerful, Royce simply felt relieved that Mina was an ally rather than an enemy. Upon landing, Mina assured the group that she had held back to ensure there were no casualties. To maintain security, the princess advised Haruto to leave a guard at the border. Haruto agreed, entrusting the task to Rid and his monster forces. As they passed the defeated soldiers, Royce offered a silent apology, vowing to restore peace to the Ayard territory even if it cost him his life. Meanwhile, in the local infirmary, Megumi continued to heal the infected, while desperately whispering to herself that she was fine. She was determined to save everyone this time, refusing to give up so she could eventually face Mina with her head held high. When a scream echoed through the building, she gritted her teeth, fearing a monster had broken in. As the only person present capable of fighting, she forced herself toward the sound, only to collapse into Mina's arms the moment she opened the door. Mina greeted her warmly, noting that Megumi looked like a total mess, a sharp contrast to her usual habit of fussing over her appearance. She hugged Megumi, telling her she had done a wonderful job and could now leave the rest to them. They moved inside, where Mina let the exhausted girl sleep with her head in her lap. A local priest informed the group that Lady Megumi had been healing the sick without a moment of rest, and thanks to her devotion, even the most gravely ill had managed to survive. However, he lamented that the village was finished, as the Duke intended to seal the land and they lacked the strength to evacuate the bedridden. Karen intervened, handing the priest a medicine that she promised would allow everyone to escape on their own feet. Though the priest initially hesitated, the princess vouched for the potion's effectiveness. After removing his mask and drinking the medicine, the priest immediately felt a surge of power overflowing from his body. Karen informed him that there was plenty more outside to distribute to the villagers. Reinvigorated, the priest ran to help the others. Mina then turned to Haruto, stating that they needed to move out. Their mission was not just to save a single village, but the entirety of the Ayard territory. Haruto agreed, leaving the village's recovery in Philia's hands. With their objective clear, the three heroes and Royce set off toward the Plague Nest dungeon. When they arrived at the nest, Haruto observed its toxic appearance, unsure if the dungeon had always looked this way or if the miasma was responsible for the change. Royce noted that even monsters typically resistant to venom were struggling, as the miasma had clearly intensified the dungeon's toxicity. Despite the harsh environment, the group was able to move freely, leading Royce to remark on how incredible Karen's antitoxin potions were. Karen chuckled, informing him that he was using a super special batch. Sensing the growing danger, Mina warned them that there was no time for small talk. She could feel the power radiating from the deepest part of the nest getting stronger, concluding that the boss must be the source of the surging miasma. The group hurried forward until the boss's chamber finally came into view. Upon entering, Haruto noticed that the dungeon was relatively small compared to the royal tomb. He ordered his pets and Royce to stay behind to guard their luggage, but Royce insisted on joining the fight. Haruto initially refused, wanting to keep him out of harm's way, but Royce argued that he wouldn't be a burden because he possessed his own unique skills. After learning the nature of these abilities, Haruto finally agreed. Karen noted that Royce's skills must be quite potent, as even her appraisal skill had failed to work on him. As they stepped further inside, they were momentarily blinded by the sudden brightness of a massive flower field. In the distance, they spotted a small bunny and wondered if such a creature could truly be the boss. Suddenly, a strange liquid poured from above, and a massive unknown monster materialized, the true boss of the nest. To their surprise, the creature immediately tried to flee. Haruto realized that if such a concentrated mass of poison escaped the dungeon, the situation outside would turn catastrophic. Mina quickly launched a fire spell at the monster, triggering a massive explosion upon impact. However, the flames ignited the surrounding miasma, revealing that the air was not just poisonous but highly flammable. Haruto clutched his head, checking to see if everyone was all right after the blast. Despite the hit, the boss began to move again, rushing toward the exit. Still dizzy from the explosion, Haruto feared they wouldn't be able to stop the creature from escaping. Royce stood his ground at the gate, declaring that he would not let the beast pass. Seeing him unharmed by the previous blast, Haruto recalled that Royce's skill was counter, which allowed him to reflect any incoming attack back at his opponent. Royce manifested a magic circle and challenged the monster to strike. The boss pounced, creating a massive impact that sent dust flying everywhere. When the air cleared, Royce apologized, noting that he had only managed to damage the monster's outer surface. Haruto realized the situation had turned critical, as the boss successfully made it outside, and he ordered everyone to give chase immediately. Chapters end at 27. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you loved this manga. Have a good day.